All right. Good morning, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. So, in today's video, we're going to be reviewing the older speech coming from Jerome Powell. This is New Economic Challenges in the Fed's Monetary Policy Review. I thought it would be fun to kind of go over this speech again. I mean, I believe we've gone over this speech before in the past, but we're going to go over it again because I think the information that was given within this speech can really be like pretty informative of what's going on today. A lot of times people think about the Federal Reserve having lost control, not knowing what it is that they are doing, messing things up, or just, basically just not doing it right. They actually have a game plan that is going forth very much according to their strategies. And if you go back and you read some of the statements and the words that they were using, even from 2020, this is August 27th of 2020, you can really see how this is playing out today, and that they are very much in line with their strategies. They haven't changed one little bit, and they are achieving their goals. Now, understanding what was going on with the Federal Reserve is understanding that there was a few things taking place. One of them is that they had reached the lower bound to zero. And when they hit the lower bound to zero, they also had a low neutral interest rate. That is the interest rate that is neither accommodating nor restricting the economy. It was close to zero. They don't know exactly where it was. Some estimates say that it was around 1.5. Some say it was 2.5. But according to John Williams, in a speech that was given in November of 2018, that was Monetary Policy Strategies for a Low Neutral Interest Rate World, they were assuming it was somewhere very close to zero, and monetary policy had essentially become ineffective. They knew that they were going to have to change the way that they were conducting themselves. Now, mainly the problem that they were facing was that the inflation and inflation expectation was too low, persistently too low. And they knew that they had to change a way that they were going to be conducting themselves. So, when it came to their monetary policy strategies, and again, this is August 27th of 2020, you got to think the pandemic has just kicked in. Like, this whole expectations of what was coming to the future, inflation, all the stuff that was taking place, like that hadn't happened yet. Like, none of that stuff. Everybody was still wondering. It was just like, oh man, how bad is it going to get? Well, as we learned from this speech, they were well prepared for the scenarios that were coming and had their own expectations of what it is that they were going to do. And so we're going to review this speech very much in the way that I do a membership only's speech or video. And we're going to break this down pretty much word for word. Now, it is kind of long, so kind of be prepared for that. This is going to be a bit of a longer video, but if you're used to my live streams, you're going to not, it's not going to be any different from any of those. But we're going to go ahead and break this speech down, and you're going to learn from this what it is that they are planning to do, and how it is that they are actually achieving their goals at this moment. All right. So thank you, Esther, for the introduction, and good morning. This is Powell's speech here. The Kansas City Fed's Economic Policy Symposium have consistently served as a vital platform for discussing the most challenging economic issues of the day. Judging by the agenda in the papers, this year's will be no exception. For the past year and a half, my colleagues and I on the Federal Open Market Committee, FOMC, have been conducting the first ever public review of our monetary policy framework. The first ever public review of our monetary policy framework. See, now this is interesting to think about because it's really, as we have learned from my channel and the things that I have discussed, it's literally more about their words and what it is that people feel that is coming from the Fed than it is about their actions. And that's why they do this public review now, is because it's more part of the communication tools that they were using in order to continue on with their credible threats or forward guidance. All right, moving on. Earlier today, we released revised statements on the long-run goals of monetary policy strategy, a document that lays out our goals, articulates our framework for monetary policy and serves as a foundation for our policy actions. Today, I will discuss our review, the challenges in the economy that motivated us to undertake it, and our revised statement, which encapsulates the main conclusion of the review. Evolution of the Fed's monetary policy framework. We began this public review in early 2019 to assess the monetary policy strategies, tools, and communications that would best foster achievement of our congressionally assigned goals of maximum employment and price stability over the years ahead in service to the American people. Because the economy is always evolving, the FOMC's strategy for achieving its goals and policy framework must adapt to meet the new challenges that arise. 40 years ago, the biggest problem our economy faced was a high rising inflation. The great inflation demand and clear focus on restoring the credibility of the FOMC's commitment to price stability. Chair Paul Volcker brought that focus to bear, and the Volcker disinflation, with the continuing stewardship of Alan Greenspan, led to the stabilization of inflation and inflation expectation in the 90s at around 2%. So this is him talking about back in the day. So we have 125 people watching, 35 likes. Go hit that like button when you join in on the live stream. More people will join in. You'll have more fun in the comment section when more people join in. But he's basically talking about back in the day when the inflation back in the 70s was running off, and then, Volcker raised the interest rates real high. Under that idea in the Greenspan, the great inflation demand, a clear focus on restoring the credibility of the FOMC's commitment to price stability. Chair Volcker brought to bear the Volcker disinflation. So this is where they brought the inflation back down to, or at least in the attempt to bring it down to that 2%. The monetary policy of Volcker era led the foundation for the long period of economic stability known as the Great Moderation. This new era brought new challenges to the conduct of monetary policy. Before the Great Moderation, expansions typically ended in overheating and rising inflation. So you get that. Before the moderation, expansions typically ended in overheating and rising inflation. Since then, prior to the current pandemic-induced downturn, a series of historically long expansions had been more likely to end with episodes of financial instability, prompting essential efforts to substantially increase the strength and resilience of the financial system. You see that? So it changed. Their crisis had changed from inflationary, rising. Let me see. Before the Great Moderation, let me read this again because this is important to understand. So many people are stuck in the classical understanding of how the Fed operated, but things have changed over the last decade and 15 years or so. And this is one of them, right? Before the Great Moderation, expansions typically ended in overheating and rising inflation. Since then, prior to current pandemic-induced downturn, right? Prior to the, a series of historically long expansions had been more likely to end with episodes of financial instability, as opposed to overheating in inflationary scenarios, prompting essential efforts to substantially increase the strength and the resilience of the financial system. And so ultimately talking about the great financial crisis right there. By the early 2000s, many central banks around the world had adopted monetary policy framework known as inflation targeting. All right, so this is important to understand because everybody around the world is now focused in on this exact thing, right? And he's explaining it. Like back in 2000, in the early 2000s, they said, hey, we're going to go for this 2% target, and we're going to do our best. And if inflation runs above 2%, we're going to adjust monetary policy to bring it down to 2%. If it runs under, we're going to, again, adjust monetary policy to try and bring inflation back up to the 2, but we're going to try and maintain 2 no matter what. Let bygones be bygones. All right, here we go. Although the precise features of inflation targeting differed from country to country, the core framework always articulated an inflation goal as primary objective of the monetary policy. Inflation targeting was also associated with increased communication and transparency designed to clarify the central bank's policy intentions. Very important to understand again, right? What was going on here? Inflation targeting was also associated with increased communication. See, before they never communicated to you. They would just hit you with the surprise. Hey, we adjusted interest rates. Guess what? Right? Shock and awe event. Now, before that's how they do it. Now, since the adoption of the 2% target, the increased communication and transparency designed to clarify the central bank's policy intentions. This emphasis on transparency reflected what was the new approach to policy is most effective when it is clearly understood by the public, right? Boom, let's get it out there. Let's make sure that people know about it, because if they know about it, they'll behave in a way that has already taken place. This is something that we have covered quite a bit on this channel, right? This is the credible threats, the forward guidance, the signaling, the whatever you want to call it. All right, what do we have here? 187 people watching with 52 likes. Go hit that like button. We should be at least 100 people right now. I've hit the like button. All right, okay, let me see here. Inflation targeting central banks generally do not focus solely on inflation. Those with flexible inflation targets take into account economic stabilization in addition to their inflation objective. Under Ben Bernanke's leadership, the Federal Reserve adopted many of the features associated with flexible inflation targeting. We made great advances in transparency and communications, right? Great advancements in transparency and communications. Okay, again, like, how much is it more about their words and their actions? With the intention of quarterly press conferences and summary on economic projections, the SEP, right? These are all brand new stuff for communicating their intentions to you so that you'll behave in a particular fashion, which comprises of the individual economic forecast of the FOMC participants. During that time, then Board Vice Chair Janet Yellen led an effort on behalf of the FOMC to codify the committee's approach to monetary policy. In January of 2012, the committee issued its first statement on long-run goals and monetary policy strategies. Again, the tools of credible threats, forward guidance, whatever they want to call it, but that's the tools that they were using to conduct themselves. Back in 2012, they knew it. They had to start setting these things up because it was all going to be about their communications and not necessarily about their actions. All right, so the committee issued its first statement on long-run goals and monetary policy strategies. That was in January 2012. Okay, which we often refer to as the consensus statement. All right, remember that statement they put out? All right, a central part of this statement was the articulation of the long-run inflation goal of 2%, right? Very important to articulate this out to the people, because if they don't believe it any other way, it won't work, all right? Because, sorry, I don't mean it. Hold on. I know I haven't had enough coffee yet. You guys had enough coffee? Let's take a second. Let's go drink some coffee, and let's just kind of process a little bit what we've already read. Stuff is deep, right? You got to really understand this stuff. You got to really internalize it in order to understand it. All right. Because the structure of the labor market, let me go back here. The central part of this statement was the articulation of the long-run inflation goal of 2%. Because the structure of the labor market is strongly influenced by non-monetary factors that can change over time, the committee did not set a numerical objective for maximum employment. Right? Isn't that great? Like, I love how they're like, hey, we got this goal in mind that doesn't really have a number. Pretty cool, huh? Yeah. Anyway, the committee did not set a numerical objective for maximum employment. However, the statement affirmed the committee's commitment to fulfilling both of its congressional mandated goals. And so for those of you who don't know, the mandated goals is low and stable prices and maximum employment, right? All right. The 2012 statement was a significant milestone, reflecting lessons learned from fighting high inflation as well as from experiencing around the world, as well as from experience around the world with flexible inflation targeting. The statement largely articulated the policy framework the committee had been following for some time. Motivation for the review. The compilation of the original consensus statement in January of 2012 occurred early in the recovery from the global financial crisis, when notions of what the new normal might bring were quite uncertain. Since then, our understanding of the economy has evolved in ways that are central to the monetary policy. Of course, the conduct of monetary policy has also evolved. A key purpose of our review has been to take stock of the lessons learned over this period and identify any further changes in our monetary policy framework that could enhance our ability to achieve our maximum employment and price stability objectives in the years ahead. Our evolving understanding of four key economic developments motivated our review. First, assessments of the potential or long-run growth rate of the economy have declined. Right? So this is, again, like if we go back to, excuse me, guys. If we go back to even John Williams' speech, that was one of the things that he was facing back then, right? One of the three main global trends appear to account of the decline of the neutral interest rate, being demographics. The second was productivity growth, right? So productivity growth was an issue way back in 2018 that they were referring to, and again, he's bringing it up here. Now, I'm not going to get too much into it because we're reviewing the speech, but I just kind of want to reiterate that, like, again, this was major problem that was being faced, and they knew about it years ahead of time, right? See, this is how we know, like, if they know about it years ahead of time and they're acting accordingly to it, then we know that they're not just flying by the seat of their pants, right? Go hit that like button. We're almost there. We're at 83 likes, 226 people watching. This is good stuff. This is how you learn it. Once you internalize this, then you understand the Federal Reserve and not this way that they lost control or they're going to be guessing on where interest rates are going to go and stuff like that. Hey, thank you very much for the $5. We're going to take a quick break and read this one. Loving the channel. Keep up the good work. I have a healthier outlook since listening. Well, thank you, Tizzy Bear. I really appreciate that $5 and supporting the channel, the Uneducated Economist, with that super chat. It's very cool of you. All right, let's continue on. All right, our evolving understanding of four key economic developments motivated our review. First, assessments of the potential. First, assessments of the potential. Here we go. Or long-run growth rate of the economy have declined. First example, since January of 2012, the median estimate of potential growth from the FOMC participants has fallen from 2.5% to 1.8%. Some slowing in growth relative to earlier decades was to be expected, reflecting slowing population growth. And again, if we go back to John Williams' speech, right? The very first thing that he says was the decline of the neutral interest rate that they were facing. One is the demographics. Populations are aging as people are living longer and birth rates have fallen. Okay, so we go back to Jerome Powell's speech, and what does he say there? Some slowing growth relative to earlier decades was to be expected, reflecting slowing population growth and the aging of the population. More troubling has been the decline in productivity growth, which is primarily driver of improving living standards over time. So right there, we were facing this issue. They saw it coming from years earlier. They knew it. They knew it was slowing down. They knew they had this neutral interest rate that was falling. They knew that they were running out of monetary policy, or that they were going to run out of monetary policy. And they were well aware of it. They're not like dumb. They're not like, they don't have 150 economists who've been studying stuff for years trying to figure out what it is that they're going to do to keep this fiat system alive, which should have died a long time ago, but yet they can still seem to manage it. Anyway, continuing on. Don't mean to rant. Coffee break, right? All right. Second, coffee. It wakes you up, it calms you down, makes you feel better. Okay. Second, the general level of interest rates has fallen both in the general level of interest rates has fallen both here in the United States and around the world. Estimates of the neutral Fed funds rate, which is the rate consistent with an economy operating at its full strength and with stable inflation, have fallen substantially, in the large part reflecting a fall in the equilibrium real interest rates, or R star. This rate is not affected by monetary policy, but instead is driven by fundamental factors in the economy, right? They can't control that, right? Again, this is important to understand. This rate is not affected by monetary policy. They can't really do it. It's done by monetary policy, instead is driven by fundamentals within the economy itself. Including demographics and productivity growth, the same factors that drive potential economic growth. The median estimate from the FOMC participants of the neutral Fed funds rates has fallen by nearly half since early 2012, from 4.25% to 2.5%. Right, and then again, this is because nobody knows exactly where it's at. I want to take this back to uh, John Williams' speech back in 2018. See, he's saying it's at 2.5%, but nobody really knows. What does John Williams say? Today, the low neutral interest rate reflects a culmination of trends extending back 25 years. Not too far off from what Homeboy was saying here on what Jerome Powell was saying, right? A quarter century ago, a typical estimate of the neutral interest rate in the United States was 2 to 2.5%, consistent with historical averages over the preceding half century. Since then, however, there has been a clear downward trend in the neutral interest rate in the United States and other advanced economies, with current estimates ranging from 0 to 1.5%. All right, so moving on. The decline in the assessments of the neutral Fed funds rate has profound implications on monetary policy, with the interest rates generally running closer to their effective lower bound even in good times. So let me read that one again. This decline in the assessments of the neutral Fed funds rate has a profound implications on monetary policy. With interest rates generally running closer to their effective lower bound, and even in good times, the Fed has less scope to support the economy during an economic downturn by simply cutting the Fed funds rate. Right there, he just admitted they do no longer. I can't speak. That's it. I'm like, this is the thing. Like, that you can have a YouTube channel. Anybody can have a YouTube channel, when I just don't even know how to speak the English language, right? Like, but I can still do it here, right? I'm still doing it out here on YouTube. Okay. He just admitted right there that they had run out of monetary policy. They were not going to be able to conduct themselves anymore, right? And it is crazy to think about how it is that they had planned this years ago. Like, they knew it back then. They knew it way back in Ben Bernanke's speech 20 years earlier. Right? So this is not a surprising moment. They knew this was coming. And that's why they had to set up all them tools, all them communication tools. Again, let me read this. With the interest rates generally running close to their effective lower bound, even in good times, even in the good times, they were running close to the lower bound. The Fed has less scope to support the economy during economic downturns by simply cutting the Fed funds rate. The result can be worse economic outcomes in terms of both employment and price stability, with the cost of such outcomes likely falling hardest on those less able to bear them. See, if they admit this to you, it won't work. Like, they can't come out and tell the public, hey, listen, we got this issue with this neutral interest rate. Let me explain the neutral interest rate to you. And once you understand that, it's like, once they start doing that, people will be like, oh no, we're out, right? Because remember, this is all a confidence game. Like, this is not stuff that they are going to tell you out there in the public. In fact, they do not want you to know this, right? This is information that they give to the other bankers. That's why I review this stuff. And this is not like, I mean, it's public accessible. You can just go right on the internet and get it, but it's not stuff that they talk about on the mainstream media. It doesn't seem to be like something that they communicate in any fashion that is like. Anyway, let's move on. All right, the third thing. Third, on a happier note. Oh, yay, happy. Okay. The recorded long expansion that ended earlier this year led to the best labor market we have seen in some time. The unemployment rate hovered near 50-year lows for roughly 2 years, well below most estimates of sustainable levels. And the unemployment rate captures only part of the story. Having declined significantly in the 5 years following the crisis, the labor force participation rate flattened out and began rising, even though the aging population suggested that it should keep falling. For individuals in their prime working years, the participation rate fully retraced its post-crisis decline, defying earlier assessments that the global financial crisis might cause permanent structural damage to the labor market. It's pretty funny to think about it. It was just like, have we healed yet? This is like anyway. Again, this was 2020 he gave this speech. All right. Moreover, as the long expansion continued, the gains began to be shared more widely across society. The Black and Hispanic unemployment rates have reached record lows, and the differentials between these rates and the white unemployment rate narrowed to their lowest levels on record. Something interesting I found about this is that years earlier in my research, I think it was Bostic who had said that they were going to try and figure out some way to bring more employment to the Black and Hispanic community. And I'm thinking, how do you isolate that? Like, that is the dumbest thing that I've ever heard. How is this going to happen? And then, here it is, the evidence of it occurring. And I'm like, dang it, man. I should never question these guys that much. I should be like, oh, that's interesting. How you plan on doing that? And not question how it is that they plan on, like you can't do it, but then wonder how the hell is you're going to get that done, right? Because, they seem to be able to pull stuff off, and they talk about it years ahead of time, right? And it's scary, some of the stuff that it had, the world goes through, and it was just like, Jesus, was that planned? It seems to be, I mean, you talk about it so much earlier in life, in time. All right, moving on. As we heard reportedly in our Fed Listens events, the robust jobs market was delivering life-changing gains for many individuals, families, and communities, particularly at the lower end of income spectrum. In addition, many who had been left behind for too long were finding jobs, benefiting their families and communities, and increasing the productivity capacity of our economy. Before the pandemic, there was every reason to expect that these gains would continue. It is hard to overstate the benefits of sustained and strong labor market, a key national goal that will require a range of policies in addition to supportive monetary policy. Y'all like your job growth and wage gains and better jobs that you got? Is that working out for you? All right, fourth, the historically strong. I mean, we just did even good jobs suck, right? I just did a great video on that yesterday. All right. Fourth, the historically strong labor market did not trigger a significant rise in inflation. Over the years, see, this is why I know, the Fed ran out of monetary policy, right? Straight up says it in one sentence. Fourth, the historically strong labor market did not trigger a significant rise in inflation. This is a major issue that they had been facing. Over the years, forecasts from the FOMC participants and private sector analysis continually showed a return to 2% inflation, but these forecasts were never realized on a sustained basis. Inflation forecasts are typical, and there's figures here. They have graphs and stuff. I left a link down in the description to this exact speech, so you can go check it out. All right. Inflation forecasts are typically predicted on estimates of the neutral rate of unemployment, or U star. Right. So again, this is deep stuff, right? We really have to understand what it is that they're trying to communicate through these things, because this is stuff that they give to the other bankers. This isn't information they're supposed to give to us. Unemployment, the neutral rate of unemployment is that rate that neither creates nor lowers the inflation scenario. So if you have a bunch of people working or people consuming, right? More people who are working, earning money. Money is consumption. Consumption is now causing the imbalance in supply, and you have the inflationary scenario coming from it. But he said it didn't work. Right? He said the strong labor market at the very beginning of the paragraph, right? The strong labor market did not trigger significant rise in inflation. Okay, but he goes on, inflation forecasts are typically predicted on estimates of the neutral interest rate or the neutral unemployment rate. Right? So now they look at this neutral unemployment and say, hey, we're above or below neutral. This is going to create the inflationary scenario, but it didn't work. Right? Because that's what they would typically do, but typical doesn't typically work anymore because it doesn't work. All right. Because they hit the lower bound of zero with the neutral interest rate. And how much upward pressure on inflation arises when unemployment rate falls relative to U star, right? So this is what they were looking at. As the unemployment rate moved lower and inflation remained muted, didn't work. Estimates of U star were revised down. For example, the median estimate of the FOMC's participants For example, the median estimate from FOMC participants declined from 5.5% in 2012 to 4.1% at present. And then, remember, this is back in 2020, not even today, right? This is 4 years ago or whatever. 5.5 to in 2012 to 4.1% today. The muted responsiveness of inflation to the labor market tightness, which we refer to as flattening of the Phillips curve, also contributed to low inflation outcomes. Bang, problem. Couldn't create an inflationary scenario even with the tight labor market. Problem here. Couldn't figure it out. Flattening of the Phillips curve. Broken system. Right? Recognizing like red lights going off, right? Okay. In addition, long-term inflation expectations, which have long seen as an important driver of actual inflation, remember that, right? In addition, long-term inflation expectations, which we have long seen as an important driver of actual inflation and global disinflation of actual inflation, and the global disinflationary pressures may have been holding down inflation more than was generally anticipated. Other advanced economies have also struggled to achieve their inflation goals in recent decades. You see this? This is what their problem was. They were, crap, where the hell is this inflation that we need in order to raise these neutral interest rates? Right? The neutral unemployment rate, the neutral, Fed funds rate, all that. It was too low off of a too low inflation expectation. All right, if you guys are enjoying this video, if you're enjoying this breakdown of this speech, go hit the like button. We're at 138 likes with 283 people watching. I know you guys are getting a lot of information off of this. This is stuff that you're not getting anywhere else, or you shouldn't really be hearing anywhere else, because nobody really breaks this stuff down like the Uneducated Economist does. Now, go hit that like button. 139 likes, 300 people watching. We're going to continue on. This is about ready to get really, really good here, right? Because before this is just kind of boring. We're like, okay, man, what is it? This is about ready to start busting it down. Why we know that they're lying and gaslighting and everything else that's going on right now. You're going to get the truth of what it is that the Federal Reserve is truly up to, and we're about ready to break it down right here. All right. We're on page 7 of this speech. If you're trying to follow, there's a link down in the description to this speech, and we're on page 7 right now of the PDF. All right. The present undershoot of inflation from 2%. Remember, this is the important problem, right? The present undershoot of inflation from 2% long-run objective is a cause for concern. Oh, you think? I mean, you're concerned about it 20 years ago when Ben Bernanke was talking about it. You're hella concerned about it right here when John Williams was talking about it in 2018, and there's no reason why you wouldn't be concerned about it in 2020 either, right? So it's not a definite cause for concern. After all, low and stable inflation is essential for the well-functioning economy, and we are certainly mindful that higher prices for essential items such as food, gasoline, and shelter add to the burdenness faced by many families, especially those struggling with the lost jobs and incomes. However, inflation that is persistently too low can pose serious risks to the economy. Inflation that runs below its desired level can lead to an unwelcome fall in long-term inflation expectations, which, in turn, can pull actual inflation even lower, resulting in an adverse cycle of even lower inflation and inflation expectations. This dynamic is a problem because expected inflation feeds directly into the general level of interest rates. Well-anchored inflation expectations are critical for giving the Fed the latitude to support employment when necessary without destabilizing inflation. But if inflation expectation falls below our 2% objective, interest rates would decline in tandem. In turn, we would have less scope to cut interest rates to boost our employment during an economic downturn, further diminishing our capacity to stabilize the economy through cutting of interest rates. See, they wouldn't be able to do it. They ran out of monetary policy. He's admitting it again right there. Like, if you guys are wondering what the hell was going on, why things are the way they are right now, things that seem so confusing and stuff like this, is because if you truly understood the truth of it, we were this close to failure, right? They couldn't do it with the cutting of interest rates, but nobody knows that. He's admitting to it right there. In turn, we would have less scope to cut interest rates to boost employment during economic downturns, further diminishing our capacity to stabilize the economy through the cutting of interest rates. It just didn't work. We have seen this adverse dynamic play out in other economies around the world and have learned that once it sets in, it can be very difficult to overcome. We want to do what we can to prevent such a dynamic from happening here. They're scared. They're scared at this point. Here we go, guys. We're going into the big one, right? The battle of all battles. We got to figure this one out because we're almost out of monetary policy. This is exactly what they were thinking, but that's okay. They had planned it for 20 years ahead of time, setting up all the little communication tools that they needed in order to project the information out to you that you needed to know in order for monetary policy to be conducted, because the adjustment of interest rates doesn't work, but the communication of it does. Pretty interesting. All right, here we go. I'm telling you, if you don't, he's telling us, right? This isn't me making this stuff up. Like, I didn't make this up. I mean, I'm finally cracked the code. I'm the one who figured it out through their own speeches and stuff. But here it comes, right? I mean, he is straight up going to tell us exactly how it is that they plan on dealing with this going into the future. And here it is, 4 years later. They told us 4 years ago. So here they're going to tell us. I'm going to read it. Elements of the review. We began our review of these changes in the economy in mind. The review had 3 pillars. A series of Fed Listen events held around the country, flagship research conference, and a series of committee discussions supported by rigorous staff and analysis. What does that sound like? Let's try that again. With these changes in the economy in mind, the review had 3 pillars. The Fed listens, all right? Get it out there. Let's go and listen to our country. Let's go do town hall meetings and stuff. Our flagship research conference and a series of committee discussions supported by rigorous staff analysis. As it appropriate in our democratic society, we have sought extensive engagement with the public throughout the review. All right? Oh, well, let's go and talk to the public. Let's go and figure out what it is that they need, right? Because we have no clue of what it is that's going on in the working class, boots on the ground kind of person. Right. You should watch The Uneducated Economist. You'll get all the information you need, guys. All right. The Fed Listens event built on a long-standing practice around the Federal Reserve System of engaging with the community groups. The 15 events involved a wide range of participants, workforce development groups, union members, small business owners, residents of low and moderate income communities, retirees, and others to hear about how our policies affect people's daily lives and livelihoods. The stories we heard at Fed Listen events became a potent vehicle for us to connect with the people and the communities that our policies are intended to benefit. One of the clear messages we heard was the strong labor market that prevailed before the pandemic was generating employment opportunities for many Americans who in the past had not found jobs readily available. A clear takeaway from these events was the importance of achieving and sustaining a strong jobs market, particularly for people from low and moderate communities. Now, isn't this interesting? Right? Dude, I don't remember ever hearing about anybody going and talking to anybody at the Fed, right? But maybe they went around and talked to some communities and I just missed it. But okay, like I heard about it happening, but I never heard of anybody who's ever talked to them. But isn't it interesting how they like brag? It's like, look at what did, like this worked out so well. And I'm like, you do realize there was a pandemic going on, right? Like you took credit for this when there was a pandemic happening, and that you'd had all this other expansions and monetary things going on, and stimulus packages and crap. Okay, anyway, go ahead and take credit for that. Like it's okay, like you fixed, one of your problems. Like the pandemic fixed one of your problems. Yeah, or one of the problems that you faced or saw facing. Anyway, is it me? Like, maybe I don't know, but did they just not take credit for that? Like, it was just like, hey, the pandemic totally screwed this up, and look what happened from it. It was just like, or we had this thing all screwed up, and the pandemic fixed it. Nice. Look what we did. All right. The research conference brought together some of the world's leading academic experts to address topics central to our review. In the presentation and robust discussions we engaged in were an important input to our review process. Finally, the committee explored the range of issues that were brought to light during the course of the review in 5 consecutive meetings beginning in July of 2019. An analytical staff work put together by Jesus, I'm having a hell of a time talking. Teams across the Federal Reserve System provided essential background for each of the committee's discussions. Our plans to conclude the review earlier this year were, like so many things, delayed by the arrival of the pandemic. When we resumed our discussion last month, we turned our attention to distilling the most important lessons of the review in a revised statement of the long-run goals and monetary policy strategies. The new statement on long-run goals and policy strategies. The federated structure of the Federal Reserve reflected the FOMC's ensures that we always have a diverse range of perspectives on monetary policy, and that is certainly the case today. Nonetheless, I am pleased to say that the revised consensus statement was adopted today with the unanimous support of the committee participants. Our new consensus statement, like its predecessor, explains how we interpret the mandate Congress has given us, and describes the broad framework that we believe will best promote our maximum employment and price stability goals. Before addressing the key changes in our statement, let me highlight some areas of continuity. We continue to believe that specifying a numerical goal for employment is unwise, because maximum level of employment is not directly measurable and changes over time for reasons unrelated to monetary policy. The significant shifts in estimates of the neutral rate of unemployment rate for the past decade reinforce this point. We continue to believe that specifying a numerical goal for unemployment is unwise because maximum level of employment is not directly measurable and changes over time for reasons unrelated to monetary policy. Because maximum level of employment is not directly measurable. The significant shifts in estimates of the neutral rate of unemployment over the past decade reinforce this point. In addition, we have not changed our view that the long-run inflation rate of 2% is most consistent with our mandate to promote both maximum employment and price stability. We have not changed our view that the long-run inflation rate of 2% is most consistent with our mandate to promote both maximum employment and price stability. Finally, we continue to believe that monetary policy must be forward-looking, taking into account the expectations of households and businesses and the lags in monetary policy's effect on the economy. Thus, our policy actions continue to depend on an economic outlook as well as the risk to the outlook, including potential risks to the financial system that could impede the attainment of our goals. The key innovations in our new consensus statement reflect the changes in the economy I described. Our new statement explicitly acknowledges the changes posed by the proximity of interest rates to the effective lower bound, by reducing our scope to support the economy by cutting interest rates. You hear that? The new key innovations to our statement reflect the changes to the economy I described. Our new statement explicitly acknowledges the challenges posed by the proximity of the interest rates to the effective lower bound by reducing our scope to supporting the economy by cutting interest rates. The lower bound increases downward risk to the employment and inflation. To counter these risks, here we go, guys. Like, I know this is tough. If you don't understand all this stuff ahead of time, all that boring stuff, it's very difficult. Like, people just want, boom, I just want the info. Why do we have to do all this? It's because if you don't internalize all the issues that were coming up, you'll never be able to recognize what it is that is happening. That's why it's so important to understand this stuff, right? The unemployment, the employment due to the lower bound of interest rates creating the high employment that we had did not create the inflationary scenario. This was a problem, right? And if you can't recognize why that was the problem, then that's the problem that you're having with the Federal Reserve and why you don't understand why it is that they are facing issues with their cutting of interest rates or the rising of interest rates and why it is that they are needed to conduct themselves in the way they are today, right? See, it was all about the lower bound and not being able to cut. And people are like, yeah, but they have interest rates way elevated now. It's all gone away. It hasn't. They're getting their issues back, right? That ammo, all right? Their issues. They have issues, all right. All right, moving on. To counter these risks, we are prepared to use our full range of tools to support the economy. All right. We're almost done here, guys. I think we're, I don't know, a little over halfway. All right. With regard to the employment side of our mandate, our revised statement emphasizes that maximum employment is a broad-based and inclusive goal. The change reflects our appreciation for the benefits of a strong labor market, particularly for many in the low and moderate income communities. In addition, our revised statement says that our policy decision will be informed by our assessments of the shortfalls of employment from maximum levels, right, rather than deviation from its maximum level. Right? Isn't that funny? Shortfalls for maximum, like they're going to go for maximum all the time because running maximum doesn't create inflation, so they can just rip maximum all the time, right? Instead of having deviations from it, there you go. Anyhow, rather than by deviations, as in our previous statement. This change may appear subtle, but it reflects our review that a robust jobs market can be sustained without causing an outbreak in inflation, right? See what I'm saying? Is this like they used to look at having a job as an inflationary pressure. Like if people were working massively across the nation, which seems like a good thing, was actually bad because it was going to create the inflationary scenario they were looking for. In order to solve the inflationary scenario, they would do the exact opposite, make you lose your job, right? In earlier decades, when the Phillips curve was steeper, inflation tended to rise noticeably in response to a strengthening labor market. It is sometimes appropriate for the Fed to tighten monetary policy as employment rose towards its estimated maximum level in order to stave off unwelcome rise in inflation. The change to shortfalls clarifies that going forward, employment can run at above at or above real-time estimates of maximum level without causing concern unless accompanied by signs of unwanted increase in inflation or the emergence of other risks that could impede the attainment of our goals. Of course, when employment is below the maximum level, as clearly the case now, again, this was 4 years ago, we will actively seek to minimize that shortfall by using our tools to support economic growth and job creation. We all see this is important to understand. This is why it's so critical to watch the jobs market, right? And I know people are going to be out there, they're lying about the jobs market, bro. It doesn't matter, right? They can be lying about it. I understand that they're lying about it. That's not for me to decide whether or not they're lying about it. I'm sure they are. What's important to understand is that the numbers that they are looking at is what they are using to conduct monetary policy. So if you want to understand where they're going with monetary policy, you have to understand what it is that they are looking at, right? It's not whether or what we're looking at. We're like, hey, we think monetary policy should be something different. Guess what? We can hope and wish and dream and pray that it's going to be something different. It's not going to happen. It's going to be the way they do it. We have to understand what they are doing. We have to understand what they are looking at. Even if it is BS numbers, it's still their numbers, right? That's what they're doing. So it affects our lives for real, even if they are looking at fake numbers. So let's look at the fake numbers with them to understand what it is that they are going to do in order to conduct themselves. And this is one of them, is the jobs market. Very important to understand this stuff, right? And like most people just think they're lying, screw them, don't listen to them, it's whatever. And I'm like, okay. But the interest rates that they impact are for really impacting my life. So, I'm not going to just ignore these guys. They're very important. These 12 people vote on monetary policy that is actually impacting the lives of everybody around the world. It's scary to think. All right, go hit that like button. We're at 207 likes, 329 people. Let's see if we can get it to 300 before we end the speech, which is going to happen here before too long. All right. We have also made important changes with regard to the price stability side of our mandate. Our long-run goal continues to be an inflation rate of 2%. Our statement emphasizes that our actions to achieve both sides of the dual mandate will be most effective if long-term inflation expectations remained anchored at 2%, the long-term inflation expectations. However, and this is so important. I mean, if you're not going to listen to anything inside of this video except for the next 5-10 minutes here, this is it right now. However, if inflation runs below 2% following economic downturns but never moves above 2% even when inflation is strong, then over time, inflation will average less than 2%. This is exactly what he was describing earlier in the speech. All right? All the unemployment or all the low unemployment and all that failed to achieve the inflationary scenario they were looking for, right? Households and businesses will come to expect this result, meaning that inflation expectations would tend to move below our inflation goals and pull realized inflation down. The end of the Trump administration. There's no inflation. The Fed should be printing money. We should fire Jerome Powell. The Germany's doing right by going negative rates. This is all things that Trump was saying. Inflation expectation was really low, right? Really low, right? And at the time, that was not actually, they were trying to raise the real interest rates, but that's a different story. But to think, at the time, there was the low inflation expectations, right? Everybody wanted to fire Jerome Powell and raise the money printer and lower interest rates. It was crazy. I couldn't believe people were even thinking that. Okay, so now, here we go, right? Remember, I told you this is good information. This is it. So to prevent this outcome, right? To prevent this too low of inflation expectation running under 2%, to prevent this outcome and adverse dynamics that could ensue, our new statement indicates that we will seek to achieve inflation that averages 2% over time. Right? Over time, we're going to get to 2%. Thus, following periods when inflation has been running below 2%, there's no inflation, the Fed should be printing money, right? Thus, post those times. Appropriate monetary policy will likely aim to achieve inflation moderately above 2% for some time. Boom, right? Not 2%. They're not going for 2%. They're going for moderately above 2% for some time. What's some time? In seeking to achieve inflation that averages 2% over time, we are not tying ourselves to any particular mathematical formula that defines the average. Thus, our approach could be viewed as a flexible form of average inflation targeting. Our decision about appropriate monetary policy will likely continue to reflect a broad array of considerations and will not be dictated by any formula. Isn't that cool? Isn't that a most amazing statement? All right, let me read it again. In seeking to achieve the inflation that averages 2% over time, we are not tying ourselves to a particular mathematical formula that defines the average. You have no idea what it is. They have no idea what it is because they don't have a mathematical formula for it. Thus, our approach could be viewed as a flexible form of average inflation targeting. Our decisions about appropriate monetary policy will continue to reflect a broad array of expectations. It will not be dictated by any formula. Of course, if excessive inflationary pressures were to build, our inflation expectations were to ratchet above levels consistent with our goal, we would not hesitate to act. Inflation's coming down, right? Inflation is coming down. Right? Although you hear stuff about it ramping back up or whatever, moderately above 2%, who knows? Maybe. I don't know what moderately above 2% is. They don't know what moderately above 2% is. Is it 8%? Is it 3%? Is it 2.2%? What's moderately above 2%? Nobody knows. Nobody knows over some time, right? So now I think about it, right? You have good jobs numbers still. Now, it's not great, and I know that they might be fake and all these people working, and we did a video on it yesterday that even a good job sucks, right? I understand that part of it, but what I'm talking about is the monetary policy and what it is that we can expect the Federal Reserve to be doing. What is it that they're attempting to try and do, right? They're trying to get an average inflation rate over time. I'm going to talk about this here in a little bit more in just a second, but right now, we're going to continue on with the speech. The revision to our statement add up to a robust updating of our monetary policy framework. A robust updating. This is not, the last 4 years is not the way that they have conducted themselves prior. It's a robust updating to the monetary policy framework. Okay, to an extent, these revisions reflect the way that we have conducted policy in recent years. At the same time, however, there are some important new features. Overall, our new statement on long-run goals and monetary policy strategies conveys our continued strong commitment to achieving our goals, given the difficult challenges presented by the proximity of interest rates to the effective lower bound. All right? Think about that, what they just said. We have all these new policy strategies. We've got long-run goals and policy strategies, and it conveys all the continued strong commitment to achieving those goals, even though the difficulties and the challenges presented by the lower bound. All right. In conducting monetary policy, we will remain highly focused on fostering a strong labor market as possible for the benefit of all Americans, and we will steadfastly seek to achieve a 2% inflation rate over time. Looking ahead, our review has provided a platform for productive discussions and engagements with the public we serve. The Fed Listen events helped us conduct our core constituencies and the American people, and hear directly how their everyday lives are affected by our policies. We believe that conducting a review at regular intervals is a good institutional practice, providing valuable feedback and enhancing transparency and accountability. And with the ever-changing economy, future reviews will allow us to take a step back, reflect on what we have learned, and adapt our practices as we strive to achieve our dual mandate goals. As our new statement indicates, we plan to undertake a thorough public review of the monetary policy strategy tools and communication practices roughly every 5 years. And that's the end of the speech. Now, think about that. That review is coming up, right? This was 4 years ago. So at the end of the year, they're going to start discussing this again. This is the way that they have been conducting themselves for 4 years. They did it on a 5-year plan. There is no deviations to this plan. So everybody that says, man, they're flying by the seat of their pants, they're not. They are not flying by the seat of their pants. They absolutely know what they are doing. Now, whether or not they're able to get away with it, that's an entire different story, but they definitely know what it is that they are up to. Now, one of the other things that I wanted to share with you, let me see if I can find it here, is coming from, I think it was from the Richmond Fed, if I remember right. Let me see if I can find it here, documents. Downloads. Desktop menu. Oh, bummer. What did I do with that? So I think it was from the Richmond Fed. Anyway, they had a discussion on what it was. Where is that thing? That the average inflation rate could be found, and it's actually backward looking. And it was such a good document. Where the hell is that thing? Man, well, I should have had that brought up before I started this thing. Sorry, guys. Since I can't find... Oh, wait a minute. There it is. Boom. Yes. Okay. All right. So coming from the Richmond Fed, and now, what was the title of this? I mean, if you type in Richmond Fed or Federal Reserve of Richmond, and it's micro minute, October 17th, 2023, long run average inflation. Right? It's very short, talking about this exact scenario, but this is important to understand. It's an update of the FOMC did not define the window of time over which it would be looking back to assess the progress towards its goal. By looking back far enough, it is possible to identify starting dates where average inflation through the present day has come in exactly at target. This is important to understand, right? Because this is now how this is the only thing that I can find where they are actually calculating some sort of inflation, right? Because they don't have a mathematical formula for figuring out average inflation rate over time. But this is it. If you look back far enough, you can actually find a 2%. Now, again, by looking back far enough, it is possible to identify starting dates where the average inflation through the present day has come in exactly at target. For example, now remember, this was, what date was this? August 17th of 2023. Well, I'm sorry, October 17th of 2023. So it's like a little bit backdated, but if you can understand what it was that they were trying to communicate at that time, right? For example, when considering inflation from October of 2008 through August of 2023, so that would have made it a lot more current to their timeline when they gave this paper. Headline PCE inflation averaged about 2%, right on target. So if we look back far enough, we can actually find there was a time with the past with all the current inflation that we have experienced and the deviation from 2% that we can find an average over time of 2%. We can know how far back it is. That is the only thing that I can find that the Federal Reserve would be looking at to try and come up. Man, my phone wanted to throw an update there right in the middle of this. There we go. That's the only thing I can find that would that the Federal Reserve has provided as far as a formula or an idea of what it is that they are using to try and come up with the 2% average over time. I hope you guys enjoyed that. This is the type of stuff that we do in the membership-only live streams. So if you really enjoyed this and you're not a member to the channel, consider joining the channel to experience these exact speeches, the current ones, the ones that are coming out in, practically daily. We grab those speeches, the important monetary policy ones, we break those things down. We are learning about how they are using the balance sheet for monetary policy, how it is that they are regulating the banks getting ready for Basel III. We are learning about all kinds of communication styles that they were using in order to conduct themselves. Everything that they are doing that is true to their actual strategies is not presented in the mainstream media. If it is coming out on Bloomberg, if it's coming out on Wall Street Journal, if it's coming out on CNBC, that is part of the communication tools that they are using. It is not the real monetary policy strategies. It is so important to understand that. So when we hear the communications coming out there, we have to look at that and say, what is it that they are trying to get the people to feel, to think about, to understand about the economy, because that is actually going to conduct the monetary policy, not the adjustment of interest rates, which is the threat, right, which they use in order to do it. But it's two different communications that are happening there, because what we had learned from Powell in this speech is that they had run out of monetary policy with the adjustment of interest rates. And it hasn't been up long enough in order to acquire that ammo back. The neutral interest rate has to rise. It has to rise significantly in order for them to have the ability to drop the interest rate significantly below it to stimulate the economy. Otherwise, it's all about their words and your perception. That's it. Now you have a much better understanding of why it is that everybody seems so confused about what it is that's going on with the Federal Reserve. It shouldn't be, right? Once you understand it in this fashion, it makes a whole lot of sense. All right, thank you everybody for hitting that like button. I really appreciate it. We got this video up to 1 hour and 6 minutes. If you want me to stick around, we're going to stick around for another 10 minutes and answer some of these questions. I'm going to cruise all the way down to the bottom. We're going to stick around for about another 10 minutes. If you want me to stick around longer, take it up to 1 hour and a half. Hit the like button, take it up to 300. We get it up to 300 likes, and I'll stick around for another 15 minutes or so. We'll take it to 1 hour and a half. Otherwise, we'll just go to 1 hour and 15 and call it good. All right, your Fed obsession is unhealthy and essentially a waste of your time. Oh, well, thank you, Luther. Really appreciate the sentiment, man. I mean, this cool. All right, let's continue on with your comment. All right. Why not look for companies worth investing in like I do? You can actually make money that way. Well, Jay Luther, did you ever think that maybe I'm just enjoying life the way it is and being able to pay my bills is what I want in life? And this is it? Communicating in a fashion in which that I'm not trying to strive for looking for more money, but just to have the money naturally occurring through super chats and ad revenue? Right? I mean, is there something wrong with what I'm doing? I mean, I understand that you think it's unhealthy, but you're getting a bunch of information off of it. You're using it, right? You're getting it for practically free. Thanks, man. I mean, I get a little bit off of it. I get your view and I get your comment. I get the little bit of an algorithm boost. Why don't you join the channel, bro? You'll get even more. All right. A fair few of you haven't hit the like button yet. Please take a moment and go do that. Yeah, thanks, Brody. Appreciate you, Brody. All right. I think it's just for conversational purpose. All right. Rates equal higher for longer. Fed wants more power to be the borrowers and lenders of last resort. Jed. Simon, what worked so effing hard trying to tell us about this? We really shouldn't mess with him. Thanks, Cheryl. All right. Yeah, and go hit the like button while you're at it, brother. I appreciate you. 256, man, everybody jumped out. They bailed. My stock, they got the information. They're done. We're out. Do you have any questions? I mean... All right. Gerald, I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't use language like that here. Yeah, thanks, Brody. And it's not because we don't approve, like, you can, I cuss every once in a while too and stuff like that. But the issue that comes up is that the algorithm recognizes that, and then it makes it more difficult for it to like, it, it doesn't want to spread those type of videos around. It's all about sponsorship. It's all about the ad revenue, and it's all about like whether or not the people who are paying for ads want that kind of communication going on with their ads placements and stuff like that. So ultimately they want like only the greatest videos ever out there. And it doesn't really matter what the content is, so long as it doesn't have like nudity, as long as it doesn't have like profanity, violence, stuff like that. The actual like communication, like what it is you want to communicate, like I've never had a problem ever with anything that I have ever tried to communicate except for one particular video, just one. And when I had them review it, they said, nah, this is not ad worthy video. And I'm like, this isn't even that bad. I was talking about homelessness in Portland and how the government screwed it all up. Like, there's people who do way worse videos than that. Mine was very mild, but yet they found it inappropriate for ad revenue, and I didn't even say anything or do anything or nothing like that. So it's very odd how it is that they want to demonetize stuff. Even yesterday's video, because I had the word suck in it, I had job suck, even a good job sucks. I had like it was demonetized when I first fired it up, and I'm like, come on, guys. So what I did is it was up for a review. I changed it to even good jobs are bad or something like that while it went through the review. Once the review was over, I fired it back to sucks and the video took right back off again, because titles are everything. If I cannot come up with a triggering title, the video will not do well, period. Like, you have to come up with triggering titles, or else it's just like if I did a very descriptive title, the people who watch it are very like pleased. The comments are great. They're like, great video, dude, wonderful, keep up the good work, all that other stuff. But it gets 5,000-6,000 views, right? Now, granted, that's enough for a great conversation, which is ultimately what I want. So I don't change the video content. But if I could get the video to actually be spread around YouTube and get people to click on it, and it's all due to the way that I title it, then that's the way it has to go, right? It's just the way it is. The content doesn't change. Like, I'm not whether or not it's a fear-mongering title or not, doesn't change the what content was going to come out. That's going to be the same. Yeah, let's go check out the super chat. Thank you so much. Pelotus Roman, thank you so much for the $5. Do you think that Bitcoin could take a decent percent of the market shares treasuries have held? To me, it is very similar collateral, but better. Well, I mean, I would agree that it's a good money and that it is a limited currency out there, okay, which makes it a deflationary currency as opposed to an inflationary currency like dollars or even U.S. treasuries could be. But no, I don't think it could take over. I don't think it could take over because really the safe and liquid asset of a U.S. treasury is unmatched by anything else out there. The idea of a Bitcoin doing the world trade is a total fair concept. Like, it can do it. There's no doubt. Like, that can happen. But what made the dollar the world currency, and how come U.S. treasuries are in such demand as far as being a safe and liquid asset for the world to use, is because of the limitations that gold had. And Bitcoin shares those same features of limitation. And because it has a feature that was built in, that's actually, because of the limitation of it, it's not elastic. Because of that feature, what you will find is that a few things are going to take place, right? One is you are going to have a concentration. The most industrious people out there are going to concentrate what it is that's available for a limited currency. So if it's gold, if it's Bitcoin, they're going to concentrate that for themselves. That is going to deprive the rest of the people out there the ability to do transactions, and they're going to fall into depressionary eras, right? Depressionary scenarios. There is zero doubt in my mind of that happening. If you have ever increasing amounts of money that you can add to the system, you will have an elastic money supply. And with an elastic money supply, you can conduct yourself with as much transactions as you could feasibly imagine, right? And so now people can now produce and distribute as many carrots or products or whatever it is that they can put to their imagination and just go full tilt boogie with it without any worries of producing so much that they would not be able to find anybody to buy it from them, right? Because the abundance of currency that is out there. That limitation is really what is the also downfall of the separation that causes the separation between the rich and the poor. So if you do not have a rebalancing of the gold or Bitcoin that redistributes that back out to the rest of the world, so a redistribution of wealth, right? What you will have is an ever increasing amounts of concentration of wealth as this constant elastic money supply is trying to add more money to the system, but the most industrious people keep hoarding it for themselves, right? So it's just like, which one do you want? It's like, I mean, to be honest with you, I could go back to gold. I could go with the Bitcoin. I don't really care. But as far as like the ability of what the people are expecting right now from the economy and what it would take to create a scenario that would allow Bitcoin or gold to then be used as a world reserve currency is probably some doomsday scenario bad stuff that nobody really wants to experience. Now, I mean, I've thought about it. I'm mentally prepared for it. I don't know if I'm physically prepared for it, but let's do it. Let's go for it, All right, cruising down. That's why I like Simon's working class perspective on this stuff. Who are you talking to? I'm basically a working guy that is trying to learn about money and investing. Well, good for you, Jeff. And see, that's just the thing. Like, understanding this stuff for yourself is really the only way you can do it. Like, I invest. Like, it's amazing. People are like, how come you don't talk about all the money, millions of dollars you make? And I'm like, I don't really brag about the stuff that I have, right? Because I don't really have that much stuff. And the little bit of stuff that I do have is pretty significant to me. And I don't really like bragging about it because it's important, right? So, I mean, I think about it, it was just like in like literally record time, I went from being in debt, broke with no real income to not only being, well, I got a little bit of credit card debt because I put some money on. Never mind. I got not that big of a, I got a little bit of debt, gonna be out of it soon. No big deal. Got assets like the house, right, which had gone up in value. Tons of equity in this thing. Like I have $100,000 equity in the house. I have almost half a Bitcoin, so what, like $30,000 in cryptocurrencies, that I've saved over the years. Got tons of like little tiny alternate coins all over the place. Like I don't even know how many little altcoins I have that aren't worth that much, but there's one of them that may take off someday. Like I have put together a stock portfolio that's, I mean, it's not wonderful. It's around $10,000, it's doing okay. I did this all in 5 years. Like 5 years, $42,000 down on a house. Now up to $100,000 equity, the stock portfolio, Bitcoin. Well, Bitcoin I did a little bit longer. Silver and gold I've done over a little bit longer. But I've put together some pretty good stuff, I think, inside of a short amount of time. And the only thing I really care about is just making my bill payment. That's it. That's the only thing I care about. All right. It would be nice to have something that I could have for a retirement. If that happens, great. If I end up getting into more real estate, cool. If I end up doing something else that ends up taking off and making it big, like writing a book or doing courses or just doing YouTube from the road and just traveling around, hanging out and going to music festivals, that's like the life that I want to live, right? Making a ton of money in the stock market and flying around on private jets to do what? I don't know. Like what's going on? Like that doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand that, right? But hanging out, enjoying, speaking, doing this, yeah, I could see that, man. Like that I can see, All right. Banks used to process checks and now process clicks. I have 3 acres full of papaya, mango, leche, avocado, lemon, lime, tangors, jackfruit. Man, that is awesome. Well, Luther, that's cool. I like that. Simon is the person to listen to because he started from the bottom. Yeah, like I mean that's another thing. Like how is it like, some dude who's making $100 million a year gonna sit there and tell you how it is that you're gonna figure it out? Like, it was just like, well, let me tell you, man. I know what it's like to not be able to go down and get a gallon of milk. Like, can he tell you that? Know what it's like to say that you don't even have the money to go get toilet paper or anything like that. Like you don't have any money. None. There's none. There's no dimes in the couch. There's none of that stuff. Peanut butter and honey sandwich is the last thing you got before payday, which is still 3 days away. Right? How many people feel that way? How many people know what that's like, man? I lived that way for freaking ever. I still feel like I live that. Like I can't get that out of my head. It's now become a mental block that I literally have to try and get out of. Right? That scarcity mindset, trying to live in abundance. It's weird. It's so weird to think. Yeah, but literally, those people have no way of conceptually thinking about it. They cannot conceive of it, because they don't know. They live in such abundance. They don't understand that there's a limitation to people out there who literally cannot go down and get toilet paper or milk. All right. Not understanding that doesn't, it means that they cannot possibly relate. Right? Everybody who is a working class person who's living paycheck to paycheck can understand what it is that I'm saying about toilet paper and milk. Other people, like those rich millionaire people who are telling you how it is that you can become a rich millionaire, they'd be like, what would that be like not being able to get milk or toilet paper? Literally, that's the way they'd be like, what? Weird. Right? Like, what is it that they would have to do in order to conduct themselves for the next 3 days without those two products in their house? Not the same. They're not the same, right? So that's why when we understand the economy from this point of view, it is a different point. It's like literally looking at something from a whole different direction and describing something that is different, right? It's just the way it is. I mean, I've hung out with these guys. You guys know it. Like, I've been to the Rebel Capitalists. I've shaken hands with all the dudes and had conversations with them and eaten lunch and drank coffee and, done trips and whatever. It's just like, but it's not the same. It's not the same mindset at all. And it's weird because to me, like, I find it to be a problem, like the mindset that I have, which is actually what is the benefit to me because it's able to give me this ability to do this channel. Right? Isn't that weird to think about? Like that just dawned on me when I thought about it. Like the same thing that gives me the ability to do this channel is the same thing that I'm trying to get my mental block away from, is that scarcity mindset of being there without the ability to go down and get toilet paper or milk. How many people have that? Like a lot of people live that way. No one wants money or a jet. Absolutely no one. You're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. Everybody wants money. A ton of money and a private jet to music festivals. That sounds fun. Yeah, I guess. All right. Simon, you've nailed all this so well, it's actually hard to fathom. No one else seems to know what you've taught me. Thank you again. Yeah, you bet, Brody. Thank you for being here, man, and thank you for all the work you're doing toward the channel, too. So think everyone that is rich didn't start at the bottom? No. What I am saying is that is that people who are rich do not understand what it is like to live at this level today. That's what I am saying. Right? Now, if you made it rich in the last 4 years, then maybe, all right? But most people have probably built this thing up over time. And I'm not saying that they didn't have the understanding of what it was like to do that back in 2000, 22 decades ago. right? I'm not saying they even didn't do it 15 years ago, but if you did it in record time in 4 years, then you probably do have a concept of what it is to live down at their bottom and not be able to buy milk or toilet paper in today's day, right? But very few people do it that fast. Most people have to build it over time, and they get they get fortunate from the position that they've done from the 20 years earlier. Bought those houses, did that work, started that business, did all those things. All right. Hey, that's a wonderful concept. That's really great. But you did it way back then. Today's a new day. It's not the same. You cannot do it the same way anymore. Right? It just doesn't work like that. So I give it to you, man. If you are rich and you built it up from nothing, then you probably did it over the course of a long time, like most people do. But if you were a broke ass in debt with nothing, no income, and had no idea what you were going to do just 4 or 5 years ago, okay, then you probably have a little bit more better relationship to what it is that you need to do and to get off from the working class stiff point of view to what it is to be a rich person. Right? I don't know what it's like to be rich. I've tasted it. I mean, I fly and, I've did some stuff that people were like, man, dude, how many lumber yards do you own? And I'm thinking, shit, man, I stand behind the till of one. I don't even know. I don't know anything like that. But yet, I stand there in the presence of people who, just assume, right? Oh man, look at you. You must, how many, it's crazy to think about. Discipline. Yeah, that's it. All right. The key to building wealth is to find a trade that can pay you more than you spend, then get your food, shelter, and transportation covered and cheap as possible. Well, yeah, Jeff, I mean, that's ultimately it. And like, I mean, everybody knows that you have to, live under your means, or live below your means, and that's the ultimate way of getting it. Like, I mean, I've met people who earn $50,000-$60,000 a year, drive a fairly nice car, have decent, amount of money in the bank, right? Because they've kept the rest of their expenses incredibly low. Other people I know who earn well over $100,000 a year, you know, they drive nice cars too. They live in a fancy house. They got the nice clothes. They got all this other stuff. They're barely scratching by because they can barely make ends meet because they have just pushed themselves to the limit. So it literally does not matter whatsoever about how much you earn. It literally doesn't. It's about how much you can save. All right? Because you can earn $150,000, $200,000 a year, but if you can't save any of it, then there's no point. But if you can earn $60,000 a year and save $20,000 of it a year, well, then now you got something going on, right? I mean, it's just like I mean, of course, it matters how much you earn. I mean, they're more than you earn, but it's like I've seen people do it all the time. They earn a lot of money, but then they go and spend that money. I could be doing these videos from a brand new Camaro. Like, straight up, I know I could, but I do not want to put the money down on it, and I certainly don't want to be making the payments. I don't know how long the ad revenue is going to last. It is, it's constantly changing on me. I got to figure out what it is that, YouTube algorithm is looking to out of the videos. And so with no guarantee of what it is that's coming, I'm not going to put myself in a position of moving into a luxury that's going to eventually cause me to fall into poverty. I wouldn't do it like I'd done that in the past. That was the lessons I've learned. All right, moving on. Seek freedom and become slave to your desires. Seek discipline and find your liberty. Yeah. I'm broke, but I'm addicted to Starbucks and caramel mochaccino lattes. Well, there you go, Pedro. Think about it, man. Like, if you put every single one of those $5 coffees, that's $150 a month. Man, $150 a month. You start, dropping that towards, put that into Bitcoin. Instead of get a Cash App, and instead of buying coffee, go make coffee. Right, go make your coffee at home. I got coffee. See, my coffee maker broke. You know what? I busted out the old percolator, the camping the old camp stove percolator with the little bloop, bloop, bloop out the top. That's how I've been making coffee for the last couple of days because my coffee maker broke. You know what? I'm pretty happy with it. Right? I don't need to go buy some coffee maker. I make coffee. Like, I don't have any problem making coffee. A little older, not as convenient, but still a little bit of grounds down there in the bottom. I'm cool with it. Right? And now I don't have to go and spend money on it. I can spend that money that I was going to make on the coffee, use for buying a coffee maker, which I'll probably end up getting eventually. But at this point, I don't have to. I could go and just put that money towards Bitcoin. And here in a couple of years, I might be able to buy the coolest coffee maker ever or not, I mean, with that money. It's the way I look at it. It's just like, is it really a necessity? No, I can make coffee. I don't need to get my coffee maker broke. That's cool. I can get around this. Uh, participate in the simp shortage. I make $480,000 per year and I don't spend a lot of money. I don't feel wealthy. I honestly don't know how people are surviving. You make $480,000 a year and like, bro, come on, man. I mean, it's just like I made 50,000. I didn't even make $50,000 a year and was, I got wife and kids and stuff. Yeah. If you don't know how people are making, then you can't relate. Like, you don't relate, man. I'm sorry, man. It's just like at $480,000 a year, and you don't understand how somebody who's making $50,000 a year is surviving out there. All right. See, that's the difference. That's the exact difference. So, like, $480,000 a year is like, I mean, to most people, that's like 10 years worth of income. Moving on. What do you think about health insurance practically bankrupting people, getting more expensive every year while politicians are just like, no? Okay, I hate insurance. I absolutely hate health insurance. I think it should be abolished. Now, here's the thing. I didn't have insurance for the longest time. My first child was born with an emergency C-section. Right. The bill was expensive as hell. It was up there, $16,000 or something like that. And it was like I wasn't even prepared to deal with a $16,000 bill. And they came up and they said, okay, so what's your expenses? What's your income? What's all this stuff? We'll see what we can do what we can do for this bill. And they basically said, okay, well, you're not going to be able to afford $16,000. And because, essentially your expenses are matching your income, we're going to knock this bill down to $1,600 because you don't have insurance or anything else. Right? And I'm like, $1,600 for a $16,000 emergency C-section? Are you serious? And they're like, yeah, that's what we want, And I'm like, who's paying for this? And like, contributions, charity, blah, blah, blah. They come up with all this list of shit. And I'm like, all right, well, here you go. So I gave him $1,600 and walked out of the hospital debt-free with my kid, no problems, whatever, the surgery, everything went off like without a hitch. All right, cool. Fast forward a few years later, Freddie's getting born, right? And I got insurance. Everything's running smooth, no problems. Went off without it, just like everything swimmingly, all scheduled, because she had the C-section the first time. They did a scheduled C-section. Went off perfectly, right? Now, my bill at the end of this one, after the insurance and everything was done paying for their part of it, was about $6,700. And I have no money. I'm going into foreclosure on my house. Like, I can't, like, my cars are, there's no way. 6,700? Oh, great. Well, that eventually ends up in collections, which, what collections is like, so great. Now, this dude is telling me that if I don't give him monthly payments, that he is going to directly take it right out of my paychecks. Wonderful. Well, this is great. This is good times. Thanks, insurance. I mean, I didn't have insurance before. I walked out of the hospital free and clear with a $1,600 bill. Now I got insurance. I'm in a collections agency for $6,700, and the guy's threatening to take it directly out of my paycheck. Wonderful. Well, I'm glad I did this. I mean, I wish I didn't have insurance to begin with. I would have just said, screw you guys. And then it would have ended up in collections anyway. Right? And maybe it would have done charitable contributions and would have paid for it instead. I mean, I was so angry. That's one of the reasons why I ended up in foreclosures and all this other stuff, is because it was just like, it was just piling up. It was too much. And I was just like, fine, screw you guys. I don't care. Like, I don't make that much money anyway. What am I supposed to do? So I was just like, well, you want $10? I'll give you $10. That's all you're getting, because that's all I got. And as time went on, when I finally got, I ended up going into town, getting closer to town, and I didn't really need a vehicle as much. I could walk to work, and I just started hammering on bills, one at a time, and started the YouTube channel and was making a little bit of revenue off of that, and using the revenue to pay off my debts and pay back all the bills, and eventually was able to start acquiring the money to put down on a house. And it was like, it was everything. It was a huge, huge difference. All right, moving on. All right. Mostly because cross-border payments are global and I can appreciate the difference. Yes, I am paying my taxes and I'm happy with it. I'm not. Then people blame the hospitals and clinics for the cost, but the insurance companies typically pay them 40% of what's charged when they actually pay on the claim. Well, here's what I found very interesting about. I went to the hospital one time because I had strep throat. Now, I went to urgent care, and I didn't have insurance or anything else. And I remember this old doctor came in and he went, "So you got a sore throat?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Let me see." And I opened up my mouth and he looked in there and he was just like, "Man, you got strep throat." He says, "We could do all the laboratory, blah, blah, blah." And he kind of rambled off on stuff, but he says, "I'm just going to give you some antibiotics. You're going to have, you ought to knock it out in a few days. Feel better." And I'm like, cool. So I walked out of urgent care, $150 for the visit. And I think it was like, I don't even think, no, it was like less than $150 for the visit, because I think the total grand total was $150 with the prescription. So for $150, this old man went, "Yep, I know what you got. Here you go. Bang, get out." Right? That's the way that healthcare should be. Now, had I had insurance, there would have been all the tests, all the administration fees. That probably would have been, $1,500, maybe even more. Right? See, that's the difference inside of it. If you don't have insurance, you deal directly with that, like, with the hospital itself or the doctor. There, you don't have all those middlemen. You don't have all those reasons to charge, to try and come up with reasons to charge. Like, they didn't have to do any of the laboratory stuff. He looked at the man and he was just like, "I know what you got. That's no problem. Boom, here you go. You fixed." Right? I mean, but no, they don't do it like that. Let's see here. Man, I kind of forgot what we were doing. I was going to time limit this stuff, and I just kept right on going. I guess you guys are having fun. How many people we got in here? 292. Well, I guess if you want to stick it past, we'll go for another 5 minutes. If you want to keep going, we'll get it up to 350 likes, and we'll keep going. Otherwise, we'll end it at 145. Go find something to do with our Saturday. There are self-pay only clinics that don't take insurance and cost a lot less. The local clinic like that charges $90 per month, unlimited visits. Morning, Simon. Man, you progression is inspiring. Keep grinding and rising, bro. Yeah, I plan on it, man. I mean, I'm trying to figure out what it is that I want to do. Like all these people, like, man, with all your knowledge and understanding and stuff like that, you should be moving into real estate. And I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't, like, I don't feel inspired by real estate. Like, it doesn't seem like for other people that's an inspirational thing. Like, they dream of it. Like, they have it in their head that's not what I do. Like, my dream is to be like, doing this on stage, speaking, doing stuff like that. That's my dream. I saved my like for now so we can make it. Yeah. All right. Well, we're at 329. We got 7 minutes here to get it up to 350. We'll go for another 10, 15 after that. All right. I have a CZ75. I like high power, though. Happy Saturday. If you're not inspired by something, don't do it. The U.S. has nearly the worst healthcare system in the world. Isn't that crazy? Because it was like one of the best at one time. Why did it go bad? It was because of the damn insurance. All right. One emergency surgery is more than most people make in a year. 99% of the time, taxes our person's pays does not equal what they receive from the system, hence debt. Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, I guess that's where catastrophic insurance would really ultimately pay off, right? So you get this high deductible insurance that has a low premium to it, and then you pay for your sniffles, you pay for your visits to the doctor, and then if anything really terrible happens, then insurance will kick in and pay for it, right? So get like high deductible catastrophic insurance, and then maybe we can, I don't know. Yes, I do agree, Brody. That's why I'm so shocked how people from the States hates the healthcare system. Visits Europe and you will be shocked. That's why I'm not doing rentals, Gerald. Hospital, prison schools. I trust American healthcare about as much as I trust the justice system. Please look into HSA. All right. I'm cruising back up here a little ways. All right. My healthcare insurance deductible is $8,000. Last year, my deductible was $14,000. Con job. Yeah, that's the way I was too. Like mine's, I think for the family, it's because that's what we have too, is high deductible from my place of work. $7,000 or something like that. So yeah, so like I mean, I don't even know why I have insurance. I don't even consider it anymore, really. All right. Well, the rest of the world does not contribute near as much to medical advancements. Drugs and technology advances mainly come out of the U.S. due to how our system works. Yeah, I can believe that. Like, you know, the most unhealthiest, richest group also has the most advanced healthcare to try and take care of those unhealthy people from the issues that they have arised. But yeah, that kind of makes sense. Uh, Explain. Canadians always bragging about their health care. Well, I guess. I mean, I'd rather be alive with a big bill and a bankruptcy than dead. And that's, a way of looking at it. Universal health care works in a place like Norway because they are extremely healthy and nearly everyone makes a good wage. Yeah. Um, I have to question some of the mentality of like the mental health of some of those nations. Like I do question some of the like like one of the things like here in the United States that I definitely hear about the United States above anything else is that you can be some broke ass loser, nobody, and figure out a way to really prosper and do it well here in the United States. Like you don't like people like travel all over the world to go anywhere else but the United States to try and bring their ideas, their inventions, their business, whatever it is that they got going on. Where do they want to go? They want to market where? They want to be where? They want to be in the United States. Now, granted, that's coming to an end, but I do wonder why it is that that's the case and that no other nation really shares in that same view, right? These other nations, oh hey, we're so awesome, we got this high wage, we got this really great healthcare, we got all this other stuff. It makes me wonder, well, how easy is it to be plopped into your nation with no skills, no abilities, no schooling or anything else in order to acquire some of the things that you have in your life that give you access to that health care and all the other things. See, sometimes you have to be born and raised in that system in order to take great advantage of it. But here in the United States, and things are changing, you can really show up here with nobody, no skills, not even ability to learn the language, not even ability to speak the language, and become fabulously well off. Right? In fact, it happens all the time, and people talk about it happening all the time. Now, granted, I'm not saying that doesn't happen in other nations, but people don't talk about it like they do here in the United States, like how that can happen. And that happened because of the freedoms that we had. All right. Now, whether we have them or had them or choose to use them, or the limitations that are now coming to that particular environment, that's what it was that drove us, right? Was the ability to do what it is that we felt was most appropriate for us. When you have a system that is declaring what your health care is going to be, that's not you deciding for yourself. Now, you might be able to decide, some doctors and stuff like that, but when you have government involvement, the more government involvement, the less freedom you have. And that's a clear sign of it taking place, is through that healthcare system. So as many people might want to brag it up, saying, hey, this is a wonderful thing, and it might be, hey, you get sick, you get to go to the doctor, no bill at the end of it. That's an awesome deal. But I also understand the flip side of that, and that means that you do not have the freedom that you might think you have, right? You might even not even want it, right? But anytime you have ever given up a little bit of security for a little bit of freedom, you deserve neither, and you will lose both, right? You are teetering on an edge. It's not yours, it's theirs, and they are allowing you to have it. That's not fair. Jeff, that's nonsense. What are we talking about? The quality of healthcare has been going down rapidly in the UK. Spot on. Why are we talking healthcare? Let's talk monetary policy. All right, I'm going to get that book. Get the book, Stolen Identity. I've read it, was eye-opening for me. A gross generalization, but not nonsense. All right, with government health care, they decide what is essential and what is elective surgery. I made a ton of money in healthcare because of our private system. I jumped in. All right, guys. This was a lot of fun. We got 344 people hitting the like button, with 301 people watching, $10 in super chat. It was a really good time. I really enjoyed it. We didn't quite get it to the 350 like we were hoping to in order to continue the video on, but that's okay. We got a Saturday that is very beautiful that we're going to go and enjoy right now. I'm going to go and fire up the line trimmer and buzz around all the edges and probably mow the lawn again, because that's what we do here, is mow the lawn constantly. But I figure going over this speech one more time was probably a pretty good idea, considering that they're going to do a review of this speech, or a review of monetary policy and how it is that they are planning on conducting themselves in the future, starting at the end of the year, and having an idea of what it is that they are doing today will then give us a much better understanding of what it is that they plan on doing then. Most people don't think that the Federal Reserve has an idea or strategy. They mostly think that the Federal Reserve is screwed up and don't know what they're doing. That is very much not the case. And by understanding this for ourselves, we are able to then conduct ourselves in the most appropriate fashion that we possibly could do. So thank you very much for being here. I'm going to read couple of more questions here, and then we're going to call it good. Brody, Simon, do you feel the Fed will need to cut to establish their credible threat this year? I wouldn't be surprised, just to make sure that they can maintain, especially if they want to ease monetary policy going into the future, and they feel that's the condition that they want the economy to do, then they would cut rates, cut an interest rate or two, just to really establish that credible threat and to push forward the forward guidance that they had been doing. So I'm losing my OBGYN because she's scared to practice in Texas anymore. We're at 350 likes. Wasn't that the target? You're at 357. Okay, I tell you what, since you want to keep it going, we're almost there. If we can get it up to 400, we got 269 people watching. Let's get it up to 400 in the next 10 minutes. If we can do that, then I'll stick around. Otherwise, we'll call it quits at 2 hours. How much are car prices going to tank with the increased risk premiums and the CDK hack? I can't tell you, but just the bullwhip effect should have prices of cars coming down due to the fact that there was a huge gap in production that had taken place that drove the prices way up. The backlog of vehicles that took forever to complete, plus the overproduction of vehicles the overproduction that had taken place when the prices were set so high, right? Because people want to take advantage of those high prices, so they start producing. That brought an overabundance of vehicles to the market, which we are facing right now, and now the car prices are starting to come down. What's going to happen from this is once the car prices come down, people are going to get active about buying vehicles because why? Low prices means moving product. Once those products start to move, well, then you're going to start seeing that the people are going to find that there's less inventory out there, prices start to move up, and then the ramp up of production starts to happen again. So over that time, right, the overproduction that had taken place from the bullwhip effect is now impacting prices, but it's not going to be forever. So when you see those good deals and you're like, man, I can't believe it's as cheap as it is, buy. Same thing on the other side. I can't believe it's as expensive as it is, sell it. Right? I mean, when you say those words, I can't believe it is, then that's not right. It shouldn't be there. Get rid of it, right? Or get it, one of the two. All right, Simon, wouldn't they cut rates to keep the higher inflation? Well, no, because interest rate cuts don't do anything, right? So the interest rate cutting doesn't really impact the economy. It's the perception of what is coming into the future. And if they have an inflation expectation that is well anchored at 2% and they have achieved their average inflation rate over time, whatever that's supposed to mean, since they don't have an inflationary formula for it, they won't need to create an inflationary scenario by actually cutting rates. They just need to put the perception out there. If the people feel that there's going to be inflation coming into the future, then that will create inflation, right? It's the only tool that they really have anymore, because we learned from his speech, right, that the interest rate adjustments don't work. The only way the interest rate adjustments will work and they can get their ammo back is if they leave the interest rates elevated, meaning they won't cut them, right? They can't cut them if they want their ammo back. If they cut them, they lose their ammo. So when we think about if the Federal Reserve is going to be cutting into the future, they are literally cutting away their ability to get their ammo back. They want the inflationary scenario to run extensively higher for a significant amount of time in order to get the neutral interest rate to rise. In order to get that inflationary scenario to run ever increasingly high is that you have to expect it to be there, right? That's why they're like, oh man, we were going to cut rates at the end of last year, but now we're second guessing it. Things have changed. We don't know. And everybody says, oh shit, the Fed lost control. That's inflation. We're going to have inflation forever. Oh my God, what are we going to do? We're starting to believe that inflation is going to be here. That's the gaslighting. It's the inflation expectation they're trying to put into the people. And you can see it clearly within their communications through the mainstream media. Like, it is clearly stated right through there. And if you're very calm, like, take it back for a second and to say, okay, I don't have to act upon this. I know what's going on. They are communicating an inflation expectation that is elevated because appropriate monetary policy seeks to achieve inflation that is moderately above 2% for some time. Okay. Take a deep breath, step back, look at it. How are they going to do that? They're going to do it by blabbing off on the mainstream media. Okay, what are they saying on the mainstream media? Okay, well, calm down, guys. All right, what is it you're trying to communicate? All right, that the inflation is running a little... Okay, so you're trying to keep the inflation expectation running elevated. That's going to keep the interest... Okay, got you. All right, so tightness in the monetary policy. Got you guys. Right? Like, just very calmly look at it that way. Right? It's not easing in the policy, it's tightness in the policy. Right? I mean, when they're like, man, we don't know, we're going to have to. Meanwhile, in the background, like, hey, let's adjust the balance sheet, right? That'll get some easing into the U.S. treasuries. Just understand how they're doing it, and look at it calmly and not like, rationally. It's like this is their game that they've been playing for 20 years. Why are we jumping the gun, right? We should be playing the game 20 years with them, right? I mean, it's just like, everybody wants to play the game in 20 minutes, and it's not. It's a 20-year long game. All right, so we're at 369. You got about 7 minutes to go and add 30 more likes to the like button there, and we'll continue the video on. Otherwise, we'll call it quits. Perception is reality for them. Always has been, always will be. Yeah? The world runs on propaganda. It sure does. Smoke, mirrors, and alphabet agencies. Yeah, all these alphabet departments. People need jail. They have no more ammo at this point. It is controlled implosion. It's not. It's not an implosion though. See, that's the thing. Like people think that it's failing. It's not, because we have learned over the course of these speeches and time that they have built up the tools for communication in order to continue to conduct monetary policy. Like people say that it's imploding, they're failing. They're not. They're succeeding. Low and stable inflation with moderately above 2%, full maximum employment. Like people, like they're not failing, they're succeeding completely. Nobody knows it. They don't communicate it that way, but that is exactly what is happening. If you look at the dual mandate and what it is that they were seeking to achieve, this was it. This was it. Uh, let's see here. It keeps working, so they keep doing it. That's right. 25 likes away from keeping the video going. We're at an hour and 55 minutes into it. Go hit that like button. We got 248 people who have already hit that like button, so there's no way you're going to get it up for another 25 likes. And we're going to go find something to do with our Saturday. Low and negative oil prices and maximally home-priced employment. Yeah. Well, it's funny, you think about it, like, you think about the three most vital commodities to man, like lumber, silver, oil, right? These three commodities that are the most vital commodities to man, think about where the prices are on these things. Oil is like 50% of its all-time high. Silver's right around there. Lumber's like at 471 per thousand. It's absolutely crashing right now. Like lumber is like, here we go. Let's give you a little bit of a lumber update. Maybe you'll give me some likes for that. Lumber is absolutely going to go into some major inventory depletion. Curtailments are running rampant through the mills right now. The price at 471 per thousand is not profitable, period, for these mills. They are not going to produce it. I am finding experiences within my own business of conducting lumber sales that the demand for lumber is very low, right? We are finding that the projects that you would typically see ramping up during this time of year are not ramping up, right? You can find it for yourself in the permit issuance, the housing starts, right? The home builders themselves are not like active within the game. This is going to create a situation in which that any kind of change to perception to the market, if the Federal Reserve cuts rates just a little bit, this game is on. This is going to be on. If buyer traffic, it's going to be buyer traffic is going to be the number one indicator for lumber sales, right? Is that buyer traffic starts to turn positive for homes, and you are going to see the home builders ramping up production, and there's not enough lumber in the system. Now, how far out that is or when that takes place is anybody's guess. This could continue on for a while. Like, I was surprised to see that it has actually gone into the summertime without any kind of ramp up in production, considering that the high price of homes is only getting higher, right? I mean, you think about it. If you were completing a home, like if you were finishing a home right now, a good quality home right now, you have something that not a lot of people have, right? Is a new completed home. Like the existing homes out there, they're starting to come on for sale, but they're not coming down in price. But you would be able to provide something that not a lot of people have, and that is a brand spanking new home. All right, because not a lot of people are doing. And going into the future, it doesn't appear that a lot of people are going to do that. All right, you got 2 minutes. You got a minute and a half to go hit the like button. You got 10 more likes to go before we end the live stream. You get 10 more likes in there, and we will continue the live stream for another 10, 15 minutes. But since y'all have already hit the like button, then I don't think we're going to get there. All right. It keeps working as long as the tax slaves believe in the American dream. Takes a special kind of stupid, in my humble opinion. Yeah, I mean, I guess that would be right to think, because really the idea of an individual someday owning a home is that American dream. Like, I know everybody always talks about how wonderful of an experience it is that it must be to own a home, or to be able to live in your own home instead of renting an apartment or something like that. That dream alone creates the demand. Like, regardless if you can do it or not, like, even if you don't have the ability to own a home, it doesn't mean that you don't want to. And if you did have or moved into the ability to do it, then you would be part of the demand. The demand is huge. It's obvious. In fact, there's unlimited demand. There's only limited capabilities, right? So when they say the demand is falling or demand is rising, it's not. Capabilities is rising and falling. The demand is unlimited. Like, I would own all the homes. I mean, if like there is never not a demand for homes. Like, that's not. It's either it's an unlimited amount. It's just whether or not they have the capabilities of doing it. All right, you guys got it. You got it to 403. Congratulations. We'll continue the video on for another 10, 15 minutes. If you can take that like button to let's say 425. Let's say 425. If you can get another 25 likes on it, we'll continue on for another half an hour. Otherwise, we'll just go for another 15 minutes and call it good. All right, you'll own nothing and be happy. Yeah, but what if you already own nothing? What if you're already what if you already own nothing, and they say, okay, you're gonna be happy. Like, it was just like, so what if we got rid of the first part, just saying, hey, you're gonna own nothing, and they just use the second part, you're gonna be happy. Okay, I can go for that, because I really don't own anything anyway, so I don't really have to worry about that much of it, right? It's just like, I own 2 years into payments on a house. Like, I mean, okay, so I own some equity that I guess I could probably take advantage of, but I really don't own anything outside of that. Like, I mean, I got a little stock portfolio, got a little bit of other things, but my material possessions are very meager, right? Like, I mean, I didn't have anything, so trying to put stuff in this house is hard. I got a kind of a nice TV. It's a big TV. The kids like watching movies and stuff like that. I don't have cable, so we don't watch TV shows. We just have like DVDs. But that's it. Like, it's simple. I already own nothing. So, like, that's cool. Like, what do you like, I mean, I don't feel the threat. Like, I really don't feel the threat at all. People are like, you're going to own nothing. I'd be like, good one. Yeah. I laugh at that. I'm having my 4th child at 45. God is good. Wow, Kirk. 45? Eesh. I think about that. Like, by the time you'd be like, well, I guess you're still pretty young, 65, by the time they're old. All right, you only need to own that much so you can eat, wear clothes, and protect yourself. Hey, right on. We got a super chat here. Wobbles, thank you so much for the $5. I give my coffee money to Simon. It's not Keynesian econ anymore. It's kinetic. Thank you very much, Wobbles, for the $5. I really appreciate it. You guys are awesome. Few rich people fix or maintain what they have. Oh, yeah. All right. We seek the knowledge death will bring without having felt death's sting. They want my soul. I found out about the 4-cycle 2-wheeled Ranger recently, so grabbed me a 93 interface, neon interface, and thicker rods than 2000. Most reliable car ever owned. Yeah. Right on. let's see, let me cruise back up here. Simon, do you feel that these low lumber prices are doing much to incentivize builders? No, to get construction going. Surely it lowered their cost a lot. It does lower their cost a lot, but the low lumber prices have been in the market for a while, right? Like, I mean, we saw 500 per thousand for a while. Like, it's been down here for months and months. The builder is not excited. Like, the profit's there, right? Like the house prices keep going up, so they could build a house and profit from it right now. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that like, I mean, especially for what they're selling for. The worry comes from the buyer traffic. Like, if I build this house, will it sell? Like, will there be a buyer there? Now, if the interest rates are dropping into the future, yeah, the buyer will be there to guarantee, because the buyer's going to think, yeah, I can just refinance going into the future. So whatever my interest rates are or payments are today, I'll be able to make those payments. And if they go down into the future, I will be able to readjust or, refinance into lower payments. But if I buy now and I make the payments, but inflation comes, I won't be able to make the payments, so I'm worried about the future. So as long as that happens and the inflation expectation is still elevated and the buyer traffic is not there, then the home builder doesn't want to participate. And if the home builder doesn't want to participate, then where does the new inventory come from? It doesn't, right? And if there's no new inventory coming, then we don't have the supply-demand balances coming back into equilibrium. And if you don't have that happening, then you have elevated prices, which is, again, the problem. And so it's just like, I don't see any way other than a financial crisis that could really actually undo any of it. And the only way you're ever going to find, or rising unemployment so significant that people stop making their payments. But even then, if they stop making their payments, how many people are actually truly underwater? Very few. So you could literally just sell your house for a profit, right? And just get out from underneath it. And you wouldn't, there is nobody underwater, right? Even if you can't make the payments, like, very few homes are underwater right now. What time is it? We got 2 hours and 5. We got 416 likes. Let me plug my phone in or else it'll die here. Okay. So 416 likes. What we say, 425. So we got to get it to 425 in the next 10 minutes or so. I asked you earlier, GMA, please cool it with the caps. What does GMA say? I am building my house for me, not selling ever. Yeah, well, that's cool. I mean, I would definitely, if you're building your house, like, there's, I say that people don't build their own homes anymore. That's not true. Like, there are homes that do get built over time. There's one that's actually, I've been keeping in, I know the guys who are building it. There's one that's on Highway 30 going into town. They've been working on it, piecing it together just a little bit at a time, piece by piece. That's what it is. Just one, literally like a giant puzzle. And, piecing it all together, finally getting to the roof sheathing right now. It's going to be all weathered in here by the end of summer, and that's awesome. But it's been going on a couple of years. Like, I don't even know how long they've been since they put the foundation down. But it's going on some time, and you can tell, like, the lumber gets weathered over time. It starts to gray out, but, again, it's just, piecing it together. And if you're just an individual, one person trying to build this, fairly decent, complicated size house, then it takes time, and it's not something that happens very often. So, congratulations on that. Just don't build a tree house to rob banks. Are you still investing in crypto? Absolutely. Like, right now, I backed off on a lot of the investments because I'm going to pay this credit card off from the bill that I had racked up on it. But that's what I like about, like, I don't like having credit card debt. I could have paid it, like, I can pay it off right now, but, I'd rather have the cash on hand for emergency purposes. But that's kind of almost a nice thing. And it's not nice, but kind of the cool thing about having debt is that if you have debt, credit card debt, car loan debt, anything like that, you don't even worry about investing. There's no point in investing. You just pay off your debts. right? That's your investment, because there's no greater investment than to pay off your debts. If you have especially credit card debt, it's like that's a ridiculous high debt or interest payment on it, because any interest that you make off of your investment has to be above that you're paying in interest on your debt. So there's no point in, like, you would have to make an extreme amount, unless it's like a killer return. Just pay off your debts. It's the better return that you're going to get off of your money, is just by paying that off, because you're not going to be able to get a return off of your investment that's going to be that above your debt payment. So having a little bit of credit card debt right now basically says I can't buy Bitcoin, can't buy any of this other stuff or gold or anything until I get those debts knocked out. But as soon as it is, then yeah, I'll be right back into dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin again. All right, expect my 2.5 mortgage. I would never pay it off early. Yeah, accept that, right? Accept the mortgage, and I totally agree, because I got a 3 1/8 on my mortgage, and that's like the only I've used it quite a bit of it up, but I was for a while making payments ahead, right? And that to me was a better position to be in than to pay off the principal payments on it. And the only reason is that if you do really truly believe that an inflationary scenario is going to be running rampant into the future, and you say like 5-6% inflation is going to be the common going in, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, having a interest payment on a loan that's under the inflation rate is actually like making money, right? You get to spend your money into the future for a buying power that is diminishing, right? So basically you preserve your buying power into the future by taking this out early. And that's actually one of the few positions to be in which that paying off your debt early doesn't really make sense, right? And that's one of them. But most of the time, most people don't have an interest rate that's under the inflation rate. Most of it is above the inflation rate. And so therefore, like, yeah, paying it off early is the best investment you can do. Alrighty. We're 3 likes away from continuing on this live stream. We're at 2 hours, 10 minutes into it. I'll give you 4.5 minutes here to go hit 3 likes, get 3 more likes on the like button to continue the live stream. Simon, talk to us about your thoughts on post-scarcity. Like, I'm not sure what you mean by that. Like, I mean, at what point in the bullwhip effect do you go from undersupply to oversupply to undersupply? Scarcity to me, like scarcity in oil, like, we were supposed to run out of peak oil and run out of oil and not have any more oil, but yet oil is at $80 a barrel. This wasn't supposed to be the case. Oil was supposed to be $500 a barrel or something like that. Necessity is the mother of invention. We will find other ways. I mean, something that I found very interesting out there is that not a lot of people talk about some of the amazing things that come out of science that seem so simple. So simple, right? Like one of them, there's a fungus out there that produces something very similar to that of diesel. And there's another fungus out there that eats oil. Huh. Isn't that weird? One fungus eats oil, the other one produces something that's similar to diesel. Right? Well, why isn't this the common thing? Like, maybe it's not efficient, maybe it's not possible, but, why isn't it being discussed? That this is a possibility that we could have these things generating fuels, right? Or eating up, cleaning up the environment. Who knows? I got fungus in my toes. Post-scarcity is the idea of automation making goods so abundant that they have practically no cost. Well, I mean, doesn't that already kind of happen already? Like, I mean, I don't know. I think about some of the things, like when you get something damaged from Amazon, they're just like, I just throw it away and here's another one. I have the same thing that happens at work where we policy A, like, something comes in where the manufacturer defect, you just throw it away and give them another one. Like, it doesn't really matter. Like, they get to the point where they produce so much of it. It isn't a matter like producing 1 million or as opposed to producing, another 100,000. The added amount doesn't really add anything to the cost of producing it. It's just adding more supply. And I think that kind of already takes place today, Now, as far as like making everything so cheap that it just becomes, well, again, I kind of almost think that's happening anyway. Like, all these, there's such an abundance of cars out there. Like, I have 3 vehicles that I paid 3,000. They're not great vehicles, right? But I paid less than $3,000 to have all 3 vehicles. I run around in them. They're practically free, right? I mean, they're like, to me, they are like you can overproduce all these other cars out there that I can make running vehicles be almost like no cost to me, right? So it already kind of exists in a lot of ways. Now, I personally, when I think about what it is that I want in my life, like what it is that I really want, like I don't want some fancy car. Like I do want the Camaro, it'd be fun to drive around or something like that, but that's not what I want. What I want is things that can't really be produced by machines. Like I like live music, right? I don't care how good of a song automation can sound, right? It ain't gonna sound like live music. Live music is unique, right? It's to its own. You'll never experience, even if the same band was someplace else, you don't get the same experience in a new area, right? The environment, the musicians that day, the way they feel, everything about it, the crowd, it creates for a whole unique experience that can never be done anywhere else in the world. And I don't care how many automations get into existence, that doesn't change, right? And so the appreciation of what it is that human beings can create from their own skills and art, right? I don't care how many robots exist in the world. I don't want a robot serving me food. I want a pretty waitress with a nice attitude to serve me food, right? That's what I want, right? And that's what I expect. And if I'm going to pay for that, then I would, right? I would pay for that. So I'm not worried about automation. Automation is going to make our lives easier. It's going to take away the mundane things that we do with our life every day that we shouldn't be doing and put us out there to pursue the things that we really should be doing, right? It's going to make our lives better and easier. Yeah. It's going to make art better because people will then not be working some stupid job, but instead creating the art that they really should be doing, following their passions and stuff. I'm looking forward to it. Like I don't have fear of the future. I do not live in fear. Like at all. Fear is how they control you. Fear is also a way that reduces your ability to actually acquire some of the things that you want in your life. Where are we at? Okay, cool. We met our goal. We get it up to 450. We'll stick it out for right now for another 15 minutes or so. If you can get it up to 450, we'll continue on. But this is the thing about fear, and the thing that I learned about it is that if they can put you in fear, if you live in fear, if you live in concern, if you're living in anxiety of the future and stuff like that, then there's no way that you can really grow very well from that position, right? What ends up happening is that you push your energy out to your extremities. You get into this fight or flight mode, and now your energy is out in your fists, it's in your feet. You're ready to run or throw down or whatever. This is a negative energy that is out there. You're projecting this negative energy out there to the world. Well, what ends up happening is you get a direct reflection of what it is that you're thinking and feeling on the inside. So if you're thinking and feeling negative energy, that there's this downfall to society and this punishment and bad times and all this other stuff, well, the reflection from that is exactly that, right? Because you get a direct reflection of what it is that you're thinking and feeling, that's what it is that you are going to experience, is a fearful experience that's full of like pain and misery and negativity. All right, now change that around, right? Focus it back into the internal, right? Now you focus it in back into yourself. You focus it in on love. You don't worry about the expectations of other people out there, and you bring that energy back into your core, right? Well, this is a positive energy. Now you have opened things up for the possibilities of positive things to happen to you. Because you are feeling and holding this positive energy, you get a direct reflection of that on the outside. And then things start happening for you. You start finding that business interactions start to take place where, the flow of money starts becoming easier. All the relationships that you have out there are much more, conducive to what it is that you were expecting from people, and how it is that their behaviors are. What is that, a fly buzzing around? Fly out the window, bud. You're gonna ruin my video. Get out. Oh, you almost made it. There he goes. Okay. Which will also end in the reset. Not buying a house in the last 40 years is a lot of not being in the tech nowadays. It's a lot like not being in tech nowadays. Tech leaders are the new digital landlords. Already no universal income. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, like, I'm looking forward to the day that I have a self-driving car, but I don't drive new cars, so I guess I don't get one. Like, maybe, I don't know, maybe Uber or something like that. But I don't know how tech, like, I don't even, like, I mean, I use YouTube and I use a cell phone. I got this old laptop, but I could really ultimately do this with paper. I mean, I use the laptop as convenience to read from, but I could, like, I mean, I could use a piece of paper and do the same thing. Like, I don't, like, tech doesn't really, I'm not even really that excited about it. Like, I'm looking forward to the days, but I don't really care. Like, I mean, I literally just don't care. And to me, the things that I really enjoy, tech doesn't offer. Tech doesn't offer a nice view. They can't do that. That's nature. Nature does that, right? Tech doesn't offer live music and beautiful art that is done by an individual who makes mistakes, right? There's like tech doesn't do that. Tech can do things that are really awesome and really similar in a lot of fashions, but they can never do what a human does. Like, they can never give you that human experience ever. And so, like I don't think about what the tech can do for me because tech doesn't do it for me. Like, it just doesn't. Like, I mean, I guess I could cook my ribeye. Maybe it knows how to cook my ribeye better than anybody else does, but I doubt that. Right? It was just like, you can't. I cook my ribeye. uh, if you had a self-driving car, you could stream while driving, and I would. Right? And that's the whole point about it. Is just like, I like driving my vehicle because sometimes I just like driving the machine. Right? I just like operating the machine. But most of the time, driving a car is a waste of time. Like, it takes a lot of time to go from one place to another, and you could be doing all kinds of stuff during that time. And that's what a self-driving car would do for people, is it would relieve them of their time that they have wasted driving. All right. What's going on with GMA? All right. You'll be talking to yourself in your car. I already talked to myself in my car. All right. What tech is capable of is inconceivable to people 20 years ago, let alone 20 years from now. Yeah, absolutely. It's turbocharged evolution for the better and mostly for the worse. I don't know about that. I mean, in a lot of ways, like, I guess it's probably having the experiences of it, like, living without, because it wasn't that long ago. Before I started the YouTube channel, I didn't carry a phone. I didn't use bank accounts, didn't carry a phone, carried cash, did all that stuff. Very Luddite kind of aspect. And I was protesting because I was telling people that they're tracking and tracing you through them damn cell phones. And until Edward Snowden came out and everybody believed him, I was thinking, well, shit, now my protest is over. So I went and got a phone and got connected a little bit. But really, outside of the revenue that I generate by using YouTube and, some of the other things, I could abandon all that stuff and go right back to the gardening and raising the birds and doing all that other stuff and have no problems with that. I enjoyed that life, and if I could make it, if I could pay my bills and have a decent outcome by gardening and raising birds, then that's what I would do. Like, I would totally do that. That would be my life. And people were like, "What do you do?" And I'd be like, "I garden and raise birds." Right? And that would be like, the ultimate. But it doesn't work like that. So, life doesn't, you can't exist in life like that. Taxes need to be paid. Properties are not free. You know, the system is not set up in such a way that you can just go and have a little tiny piece of property and be on your own and just live life and expect to be like, Little House on the Prairie type type living. You can't do it. It's just like, they don't allow you to. The government charges taxes. That means you have to have an income. If you have to have an income, means you have to have a job. And if you have a job, you're paying taxes on that. And now you're part of the system, and it sucks, right? It's all there. So for me, if I can't have a life gardening and raising birds, then I want to have a life where I travel around talking, doing speaking engagements, doing YouTube videos, like, starting doing the memberships. This is how you guys can actually help me achieve this goal. Become a member of the channel, right? It's $1 a month, cost you, $12 a year, $120 a decade. You get a ton of information, of hard work that I put into it in order to bring you the ideas that you just don't get anywhere else. And you get to support the Uneducated Economist. I want to grow this channel to have 10,000 members. If I had 10,000 members to the channel, I believe that would bring the stability that I would be looking for, that I could abandon my W-2 job, and I can go and pursue these things that I dream of in reality. And literally, you can help join in me achieving that goal and dream for $1 a month, $12 a year, $120 for a decade, and you will get a ton of valuable information that is reconnected. Here we go. Alrighty, guys. My time says when it reconnected, what happened here? The time says 1 hour and 4 minutes, but that ain't right. We've been out here for hours. Huh? Something wrong with the counter on my time, on my clock. All right, what kind of birds? I like raising chickens. And I like ducks too, ducks and geese, turkeys, But basically, your farm animal birds. Raising Cornish crossrocks, the meat birds, that was really I think there was some actual money to be made inside of that. Here in Oregon, you're allowed 1,000 birds off your property. So you can sell 1,000 birds, raise them, butcher them, package them, and sell them as a whole bird. You have to sell them off the property itself. You can't take them anywhere. You can't go to a farmer's market or anything like that. Then you need licensing. But up until that point, you can do it with no license. You don't need you don't need to register. You don't need a license. You don't need to do any of that stuff. All you have to do is keep some records, and you don't violate any kind of FDA thing or, Department of Agriculture or nothing. So yeah, and that was a hell of a way of actually earning some money. I could actually earn money doing that. And that was a good time, but this piece of property that I'm on wouldn't necessarily work out too well. The birds kind of stink, they're messy, nasty little creatures. And so, especially if you concentrate them into a tighter, pen or something like that, then they can get pretty ugly pretty fast, So you need some property to move them around on so that they have fresh grass to be on a regular basis, or be able to clean up after them, and all that needs a little bit more property than what I have. Awesome mentoring. Oh, thanks. All right, great sustainability with those chickens. Yeah. And unfortunately, I had to get rid of my last chicken because the damn possums and raccoons were just tearing it up, and they would get into the coop by digging underneath. And as much as I tried to stop them, they were finding their way in. So I took the last hen that was live, and I took her down to the neighbor's house and said, well, here, you can go live with them because you're not going to make it here on your own. So I'm going to get that all set up and redone properly so I can actually have my birds back again. Imagine a world where animals live better than farmers. Not going to happen either. No, there is places, Brandon. That's not true. That's not true. When I raised my birds, I made sure that the birds had a decent life, that they had good fresh grass to be on, that they had clean water, and, that they were able to roam around in the sunlight. And they enjoyed being a bird for 2 months that they lived, but that was the case for them. And I've seen other people who feel the same way, who raise their animals in the best condition that animal would enjoy if they were in their natural environment, or as best to their natural environment as they can get them, allowing them to pasture raise or pasture feed and stuff like that. It's it's a different form of farming, right? It's not like what you get from the grocery store. That is very scary in the way it is done. But most, like, small batch farmers, they enjoy how how much that they care for and how much their animals are raised in a healthy, clean, and nice environment, right? And when you do it that way, you can actually taste the difference within the food, right? I mean, it tastes better, it's more nutritious, it's, everything about it is better. All right. I raise huskies. They live better than me. I live in their house. Keep propping keep propping the owner class, guys. I'm sure it'll work out for you. It doesn't matter. Eat the rich. You should really read this book right here, bud. Okay? This book right here. Because you read this book and you're going to understand there's no reversing course on this. Right? There's separation between the rich and the poor. If you do not understand that you have to get yourself on the other side of the wedge, sorry guys, if you don't understand that you have to get yourself on the other side of the wedge, then you're gonna be suffering and wondering why it is that things are just constantly getting worse for you. This is not something that you can solve. This is not something that can be fixed. This is not something that is going to reverse. And in order to reverse it, the pain that the experience of the people, especially those at the lower end, are going to face is going to be far, far more impactful and devastating than what you are experiencing today. See, it's better to understand that the wedge that was driven years ago and that is still expanding today is due to the conditions that were taking place before we were even born. The decisions that they made led us down to the path that we are in today. In order to solve this problem, it would take generations of experiencing of hard work, no increase in luxuries, paying off debt, saving as much as we can, and doing it for so long that we would not know what it was like to actually enjoy something that we are enjoying today. It would be over. It would not look the same. Enjoy what we have. Yes, the rich are going to get richer. It's going to get even worse. Recognize it, understand it for what it is, and know that you can get on the other side of the wedge. Right? You can figure it out. There's ways out there, but you're not going to do it in your traditional means. If you think that you can go to a 9-to-5 job and get a house and raise a family, you're wrong. That was a time long ago. That doesn't exist anymore. Cantillon effect is well at play right now. It has separated the rich from the poor. It has sent the domestic manufacturing away. It is driving ever increasing amounts of luxuries into this nation. And there is no reversing course on it. The reversing course is too painful for anybody to ever vote in, for one, nor do they want to experience it. This isn't going to happen. All right. Learn how to play the game. It takes hard work and discipline. That's right. It takes hard work and discipline, and you have to build it brick by brick, little pieces at a time, just like that house, right? It takes a piece at a time. And there's nobody out there who you can vote for, and there's no system that's going to come in that's going to change it to make it better. Like, I mean, the expectations of voting somebody in or having somebody in a leadership position that can make it right for everybody is delusional. It doesn't work like that. Very new to your channel. What is the effect you just mentioned? Didn't catch the name. Oh, okay, Daniel. This is Cantillon's essay on economic theory. Cantillon wrote this essay hundreds of years ago. There's a link down in the description to an Amazon affiliate link where you can go and buy this essay. I get a little commission off of that. Even if you don't buy the essay, anything that you put in your cart after clicking on that affiliate link, I will also get a commission on. So just go buy something for yourself. Click on that Amazon affiliate link first. But you don't have to buy this off of Amazon. You can go and get the essay for free off the Mises Institute. So just type in Cantillon, Cantillon, Cantillon essay on economic theory, and you should find the essay there at the Mises Institute. I suggest you read this thing. It was one of the first essays ever written on the economy, describing how the economy functions. It's very old, right? It's hundreds of years old. He's talking about horses and wagons, and we have cell phones and airplanes today, digital currencies, a very different type of environment that we now live in. But the economic forces that he was describing inside of this essay are still very relevant, very relevant today, and you can find evidence of it all the time. Now, there's 3 chapters in particular inside of this book. The increase and decrease of money to the state. It's chapters 6, 7, and 8 in part 2 of the essay. When you read this essay, you're going to find that there is a certain condition that takes place when new money comes into the system. The people who have access to that new money, the people who are closest to it, when they get access to that new money, they spend it into the economy. But what ends up happening is that that money starts being spent on more items. The new money comes in, more people are getting access to this new money. The more that they are consuming, the increase in consumption starts to take place. This increase in consumption starts driving the prices up. Well, when the prices move up, the people who have first access to that money, the people who are closest to it, they don't want to spend that new money on higher priced items, right? They want that new money, they want to enjoy it, but they want to enjoy it at the same pricing that they were experiencing. So what ends up happening is when the prices move up, foreign production starts to find its way in. When this foreign production starts to come in, it starts driving the domestic manufacturers out. Right? So if new money is continually pouring in and people have access to this new money and they're constantly spending it into the economy, buying into luxurious items, what they will do is they'll ever increasingly drive the prices up of everything, driving out the domestic manufacturers because they cannot compete with the foreign production. The foreign production starts to move in. The people who are working those manufacturing jobs start falling further and further away from the rich as the inequality begins to start to impact ever more increasingly amounts of the people who have less access to that money, and the problem grows even worse. And so this is the wedge that is driven. It's not something that is done by a system of choice. Like, it wasn't like a bunch of men got together and said, hey, we're going to do this and make this happen. It was a bunch of men who got together and say, hey, this is going to happen. We're going to take advantage of it. Right? And that's what they did. And there's nothing you can do to stop it. So it's like going and fishing when the fishing are there and then getting mad at the fisherman for taking all the fish. Like, it's like he knew there was there. Like, what are you going to do? You know, it was go and take it all, right? And so, yeah, we could say they shouldn't do it. Okay. Well, if they didn't do it, somebody else would have, because it's the natural courses of economics. It's just the way it goes down. And as much as we wish and hope and dream for something to be different, it's not. These economic forces are described from hundreds of years ago, and they're still at play today, and there's nothing that we can do to change them. We just have to understand what those economic forces are, how it is that people interact with it, and how it is that we can best position ourselves in order to deal with those impacts. Alrighty, guys. This was a lot of fun, but I think we're going to have to call it quits now. I don't know how many hours we're into it. My counter is all messed up. But we're at 449 likes, which is so awesome. I thank you guys so much for being here today, being part of this live stream. Deja vu. Let your country work for you. You know? All right, it's great to see you, Deja vu. Simon, any updates, new thoughts on the liquidity crisis? Well, I think it's in play. Like, I think I think the idea of what it is that is happening around the globe right now is evidence of the liquidity crisis that is at play right now. But you got to understand that if we know that it's a liquidity crisis coming, then it's not going to happen, because if we know it's coming, the Fed and the Treasury and the governments and everybody else around the world knows it's coming too. So there's no way that it's going to happen. Right? Not like in that fashion. It needs a unique event to take place that will trigger something for something to be like majorly impactful. Otherwise, they're just going to gear up for it and get ready. Very much like, you know, the banking crisis that had taken place. We had a whole banking crisis. Did it really create any kind of real crisis? No, not really. I mean, people talked about it. It was definitely prevalent, but the Bank Term Funding Program took care of business. I mean, there's still a problem out there. I mean, every time the yield moves up, the asset price goes down and unrealized losses start to run rampant through the economy. And that is what most people are finding to be the crisis situation. However, if they held on to all those assets until they matured, then there wouldn't be any losses. Their only losses is if you try to sell it at a loss, right? It's an unrealized loss, meaning like, oh crap, my asset is now underwater. It's undervalued from what I thought it should be or what I have it priced at. That is very difficult on the banking system, as that creates financial conditions. That means that they cannot really loan out a whole lot of money, considering that they have more liabilities than assets, which for any balance sheet is a big no-no. So if that situation comes up, well, then you have liquidity issues, which is what the Federal Reserve and the Treasury is attempting to prevent from taking place. So you can see it happening. I mean, you can see it happening right now, like all the time. But because they know it's taken place, they've conditioned or have the tools set up to deal with these conditions. So is it going to create a crisis situation where it's just like, oh crap, we got to pull our hair out and everything's coming undone? I doubt it. Like, I doubt it. If we know it's coming, then they know it's coming too, right? But they are going to change or set up systems that nobody was expecting, and we have to be prepared for that, right? But getting prepared for an actual crisis, like get into gold now before it's too late, yeah, no, I don't think so. All right. Buy or build a factory. Only the rich can afford Viagra. Yes, the poor eat fish instead of Viagra. All right. What, if anything, do you think will be in short supply in the next couple of years? Well, I think lumber's going to come up in short supply here pretty soon. Like, I mean, that's one of them. I think houses are in short supply. So, I mean, there's two, you know. I think at some point we're probably going to start finding where some of the more vital commodities are going to start coming up in short supply, like silver or copper, you know. Now, how far out and what that would look like, and then what ends up, you know, taking place from that is anybody's guess. I don't know. Alrighty, guys, I'm going to call it quits. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed hanging out with you for however long we were out here, because my counter's all messed up, so I don't even know anymore. But I really enjoy this. If you guys really enjoyed this video, you enjoyed the breakdown of the monetary speech that we had done, consider joining the channel. It's $1 a month. There's a link down in the description. You have access to all kinds of member-only videos, which is well worth the $1. You will be able to catch up to speed on some of the theories and understandings of monetary policy like we understand here on this channel that we describe. It's all through the Fed's words themselves, not through the propaganda media and using like news articles. That's for, you know, other discussions on how they conduct themselves. This is the real discussion, how it is that they conduct themselves and the way they communicate to the other central bankers. It's very important stuff. It's hard to understand on your own. That's why we have these conversations for it. And if you find it valuable, if you find it informative, please sign up for the channel, $1 a month. This is what I'm pushing for, to try and get away from my W-2. So go get your friends, go sign them up for it too. They're going to love it. They're going to enjoy it. And they're going to learn something about the economy that they have never known before. So, Uneducated Economist. You guys let me know.